Sports Center.
I'm Doug Brown. We didn't have to wait long for the first win by a double-digit seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Duquesne can do 71-67. Their first NCAA tournament win since 1969 as they knock off BYU.
The call on the Westwood One NCAA radio network, 71-67 Duquesne, the final. Day Grant with 19 for the Dukes. Other finals today, Creighton beats Akron 77-60. Ryan Kalkbrenner with 23 points. Michigan State over Mississippi State 69-51. Tyson Walker with 19. Duke guard Caleb Foster will miss the tournament with a right ankle injury. SMU fires head coach Rob Lanier after only 2 years on the job. The Mustangs won 20 games but lost 6 of their last 7. The women's first 4 continues tonight on ESPN2, starting at 7 Eastern with Arizona against Auburn.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Canty. Have you filled out your women's bracket yet? No? Well, you still have time, so don't panic as we're here to help. It's Unsportsmanlike, 6 a.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge Studios.
Let's ride!
And off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. It's AFR. I'm Matt.
Love you, Matt.
Paul O'Neill.
They're chanting Paul O'Neill's name.
Musso. And Mr. Toby Tomplay. All right, we're here. Glad you are as well. Get out there and make it a good one. Mike Triplett will be with us next hour. Kendall Rogers in hour number 3 as LSU baseball is getting set for its home opening SEC series of the conference slate. Excited about that. Florida's coming in. Jay Johnson met with reporters earlier today. We'll get to that in just a quick second. I want to start, though, with a question that everybody asks on this very day. Yeah, hit it. Show open, Bud Light, go.
It's time to pop the top on another edition of AFR with Bud Light. Drink easy. Sorry, I'm in a mood. None of my computer, nothing's working. I'm pissed. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to just take a deep breath and settle down. I'll start today with the question everybody asked today. How's your bracket? I don't care how your bracket's doing. That actually has nothing to do with my computer's not working. I really don't care how your bracket's doing, and nobody cares how your bracket's doing. So here's my PSA. If you're at work today, if you're going to the grocery store, if you're going out to dinner tonight, don't ask anybody how their bracket's doing. Because really all you're saying is you want to tell them how your bracket's doing, and nobody cares how your bracket's doing. Nobody cares if your bracket's busted. Nobody cares if you had BYU beating Duquesne and going to the Elite Eight. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your bracket except you. You want to win your pool? Great. Good luck. I hope it goes great for you. I really do. Sincerely, I want all good things for all people. So I hope your bracket goes great and I hope it goes well, but I don't care how your bracket's doing. So I'm not going to ask you, and don't ask me. The only thing that we might actually talk about with respect to brackets here is how Mama Scone's doing, because that seems to have some staying power over the years because a lot of you like it. So PSA, no matter where you go today, work or whatever it may be, home, nobody cares how your bracket's doing. Wagner's playing North Carolina right now. I don't care if you had Wagner pulling the upset. Neither does anybody else. So don't tell me about your bracket. I'm not interested. And with that, my Twitter and the text line is probably going to be flooded right now with people telling me how their bracket's doing. And you know what? I'll block you all today. I'll ban-hammer every one of you. All right, March Madness is underway. We'll keep you posted. I would love to keep you posted, actually, but I have no internet connection whatsoever. I'm just sitting here flying blind without any internet connection, so we'll just have fun today, and I'll make stuff up as I go. I don't even have my show rundown printed. It's one of those days. What I do know is that LSU is going to open up a 3-game series against Florida on Friday out at Alec Box Stadium, and Jay Johnson met with reporters earlier today to kind of preview that series. I mean, interestingly,
And this is a rematch of the College World Series championship series of a year ago. You don't need me to tell you that. It's just a friendly reminder. But both teams are going to look dramatically different because both teams really mirrored each other a year ago and had just a mass exodus of those players that were core components of their teams. I just start with Dylan Cruz and Wyatt Langford. I mean, both teams are going to look dramatically different than they did a year ago. And look, Jay Johnson talked about that today when he met with reporters.
Yeah, I think we're both different. When you looked at that series for the national championship, real marquee players, Cruz on our side, Langford on their side, Skeens on our side, Sprode and Waldrop on their side. And then I think we're similar in the fact this year is they have some guys that were there that maybe weren't those frontline guys that have moved up in their pecking order on their team or point of impact. You know, Hyman, guy that comes to mind, obviously. You know, we both still have stars. They have Caglione, we have White. So I think there's a lot of similarities.
One of the things Jay Johnson did say is that he's going to go with the same rotation as a week ago, and I don't think that should be any surprise. One of the worst things, in my opinion, that you could do after a weekend like last weekend is overreact. You had a month's worth of a sample size of games to figure out what you felt you were. And, you know, when Jay Johnson spoke after that win over Louisiana Tech, you know, he talked about his team not responding well, his pitchers not responding well to adversity against Mississippi State this past weekend. Well, it's a learning experience. It's part of what goes along with this and remembering that, look, that was a tough weekend, no doubt, but it doesn't minimize the talent this LSU baseball team has. They are a very talented baseball team that is not even debatable. You can go look at any prospect ranking list you want, from Perfect Game and MLB and D1 or any of them. And you'll see, look, all three of the guys that are going to pitch in the rotation for LSU this weekend, all three of them are top 50 players in the country on the MLB.com prospect list. All three of them. So you've got talented guys. You have guys that just didn't respond well to a tough situation. Look, yes, you know, you'd seen Luke Holman pitch in the SEC before. That was his first time pitching on Friday night for LSU. It was the first time for Gage Jump. Look, he missed a year ago with the torn UCL with Tommy John surgery. It was his first time on the road in the SEC pitching for LSU. It's different. I don't know what the atmosphere was like when UCLA went on the road and played Arizona State. My guess is not great. I don't know that, though. You know, obviously, you were going to have, I mean, even, look, the guy who got you deepest among your starters, got you deepest into his start, was Thatcher Hurd, who has been in some big spots. He just gave up a 416-foot homer to a guy that's probably going to be a first-round pick on a pitch that was a good pitch that he executed, that Dakota Jordan just took 6 inches off the ground and hit it to dead center. I mean, you tip your cap sometimes to the other guy. But I'm excited to see how this team responds, and it's worth noting again, it's one of the things that when Dave DeLucci was here with us on Monday, he pointed out, and he's right. Every single road team lost their series in the opening weekend of conference play. Or another way you want to say it is every home team won. So you know, now that flips, right? Now you're at home. And how do you respond to the adversity you faced a week ago? That's what I'm looking forward to. Look, Jay was asked about it too. He was asked, you know, how he thinks his pitchers are going to respond to the rough outing a week ago.
Couldn't be happier with Tuesday. I think we ironed some things out approach-wise that I think will help. And Luke has thrown a bullpen. Gage has thrown a bullpen. Thatcher will throw one today. But the work seems good. And I think there's a lot of firsts. I've said that, you know, first time on the road, first time in an environment like that for a lot of guys. And, you know, first time with that, maybe whatever you want to call it, elevated competition. And, you know, I think we learned a lot. Now it's utilizing that to our advantage going forward. And, you know, we put a lot of time in on making sure those guys are better this weekend.
27 to go. I mean, 3 down, 27 to go. So go get a series win this weekend, get back to 500 in conference play, and see if you can fare better on the road at Arkansas next week. But a big opportunity with the Gators coming in. We'll talk plenty about it. Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball will be here to start hour number 3. We'll look forward to that. Our show open every day is brought to you by Bud Light. Drink easy in Louisiana with the great taste of Bud Light, the official beer of AFR and the official beer of the LSU Tigers. Of course, Tigers, the national champs. If you're going to be out at the box this weekend watching LSU and Florida,
Make sure you got plenty of ice cold Bud Light. You can get it at the box, or if you're going to be tailgating, whatever the case may be. And you can still get, while they last, the collector's edition purple aluminum bottles, the championship bottles for the women's national championship team. I have one of those bottles on set here with me in the national championship koozie. You can get them while they last. At great local retailers. When they're gone forever. So I always tell you, man, get a couple of cases. One as a collector's item to keep forever, and one or a few to drink. Drink easy with the champs and Bud Light. All right, y'all, it's after further review. We're glad to have you hanging out with us here. We do have a lot to get to. As I mentioned, Kendall Rogers will be here to start hour number 3. Mike Triplett, a little more than 1 hour from right now. I want to get Mike on kind of to talk about this first wave of free agency. Of course, he's a great contributor to our show during football season these past several years, and we love having Mike on the show. So we'll get his. It's a good chance to check in with Mike to see how things have gone from his perspective. When we come back, I do want to talk some Saints, because the Saints did make another free agent move today. They've signed a defensive free agent, one of their own. And while I do think it's significant, I also think this signing leads to one more, even greater question of significance, which we'll get to when we return on AFR.
AFR.
Love telling you about Action Industries, an official partner of LSU Athletics. You can always look them up online, actionindinc.com. So it's Action Industries Incorporated, so hence the actionindinc.com. And remember, Action Industries, yes, they service the petrochemical and refinery markets up and down the river, but they also have fabrication shop services, pipe, structural steel, pressure vessels. They also offer food-grade fabrication. Remember, that's important. They work with one of the largest coffee brands in the world. And I want to remind you, if you need additional resources on your job due to a shortage of skilled labor, they can help maybe supplement your mega projects. Like, what if the company you hire has thousands of workers, then they get maxed out? Well, Action Industries can help. Again, check them out online. You can check them out on LinkedIn, 2 locations in Belrose and in Geismar on Highway 30. It's Action Industries.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Plucker's Wing Bar, open till midnight or later every night of the week, where every Monday is all-you-can-eat wings. Plucker's Wing Bar. If you don't like our wings, we'll give you the bird.
See where you stand on the leaderboard for the $1 Million Bracket Challenge, powered by Acura of Baton Rouge and Coors Light at 1045ESPN.com. First place wins $2,024 cash, and if your bracket is perfect, you will win $1 million and a 3-year lease on a 2024 Acura RDX. It's the $1 Million Bracket Challenge provided by Acura of Baton Rouge and Coors Light.
Oh, you mean so everybody gets to tell everybody how their bracket's doing?
And don't tell Matt about your bracket.
No, I don't care about your bracket.
But check the leaderboard, because you could win.
Go check the leaderboard. Don't tell me about your bracket. I don't give a damn about your bracket. I don't care about your bracket. I don't care about your bracket or any of your brackets. I don't care how your bracket's doing. Not an ounce of me. Not an ounce of me cares. Can I be any more clear?
What about your own bracket?
Don't care about how that's doing either. Don't care. Not at all. No, I fill it out of obligation. We have the bracket challenge here. We all fill out our bracket. I fill it out. I don't know. Duquesne won today.
They did.
You think I know a damn thing about Duquesne? Not a single thing. I don't know a single player. I don't know a coach on that team. I don't know anything about Duquesne. So anybody who tries to flex about their picks on a bracket, you don't know about nothing. You know anything about Duquesne? Anything?
I think their mascot's the Dukes.
No. This team.
Oh, this team. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
So I don't care who you picked in that game. Now, Mama Scone calls him Duquesne.
BYU plays Duquesne.
Nailed it. Now, that's the only bracket I care about.
Yeah.
Is Mama Scone's. And if St. Mary's goes and wins the national championship, that would be hilarious. It's literally the only thing about this whole thing that I would care about at all.
They got a shot.
No, they don't.
It's March Madness, Matt. Everybody's got a shot.
No, they don't have a shot. They can win some games in advance. I mean, St. Mary's is a good program. They're a good defensive team and all that sort of stuff. But so the talking heads on ESPN tell me that they're a good defensive team. I haven't watched St. Mary's play. I know they're the Gales.
The Gales, yes.
Patty Mills went to St. Mary's. I know that. That's about the extent of it. I know nothing about this St. Mary's team other than they're a good defensive team. All right. But maybe they'll have a collision course with Duquesne a little later. With Duquesne. Look.
BYU plays Duquesne.
She's so sweet. She's such a little sweetheart, isn't she? How could you hear that and not smile?
You can't. That's impossible.
People wonder, how did she give birth to me?
Yeah.
People ask that all the time. How did someone so sweet and so docile and so charming raise me? I don't know. It just goes to show you, is it nature versus nurture, Lodge?
Hey.
Nature always wins. That one didn't get you.
That one didn't.
Did that not hit?
It sounds very familiar,
it
did not hit.
Muse, it's Wedding Crashers.
Oh, yeah, why? Christopher Walken, of course. Yes.
Muse.
Secretary Cleary, how could I not?
Devastating.
Yeah.
It's when they're playing flag football or touch football.
Crab cakes and football.
And the secretary, I don't know what got into me. Nature versus nurture, Lodge. Nature always wins. Okay. So the Saints have re-signed safety Johnathan Abram. As soon as they cut Marcus May, this was maybe the biggest no-brainer of the entire offseason. We knew the Saints were going to re-sign Johnathan Abram because they signed him a year ago, and quite honestly, he was pretty good for you last year. In large part out of necessity because Marcus May was a disaster. Marcus May was suspended for 3 games last year for violating the league's substance abuse policy, and then he went on IR later in the season. So Marcus May ended up only playing a handful of games for you this past season, and so he played 7 games to be exact. So that forced Johnathan Abram and Jordan Howden into the starting lineup, into that strong safety role opposite Tyrann Mathieu. So because he stepped up in a spot last year and played very well, I think re-signing Johnathan Abram was a pretty obvious move. The only question was, would someone else come in and scoop him up? What I should say is what was obvious is the Saints' desire to re-sign Johnathan Abram. I think the day they cut Marcus May, we said it here. Well, you're going to bring Johnathan Abram back. It's just a question of, are you convinced that Abram is your starter,
Or are you looking for him to be that depth rotation piece again, and you're looking to draft a starter or go sign a big-name safety in free agency? More of that in a second. But, again, last year, just to magnify that a bit more, Abram had 26 tackles. He had 1 pass defense, forced a fumble, had a pick, and played 208 defensive snaps. That's all according to Pro Football Focus. And he also played 114 special team snaps. So you're talking about a guy that gave you a lot of reps on special teams, and when your starter, Marcus May, was either suspended or injured, he played a lot for you. The interesting thing about Johnathan Abram is but his signing a year ago made sense. Remember, just to refresh your memory, Johnathan Abram was a first-round pick of the Raiders. He was 27 overall. So this is a guy who was talented enough to be a first-round pick. He was Mississippi State, wasn't he? Yeah, Johnathan Abram went to Mississippi State, was a first-round pick of the Raiders, 27 overall, spent his first 3 years with the Raiders, and then in 2022 bounced around with like 3 different teams. He was with, he started that season with the Raiders, played 8 games, then went to Green Bay, played 2 games, and then spent the final 5 games with the Seattle Seahawks. So he played for 3 different teams in 2022, and then lands with the Saints in 2023 and has a really good season. So again, it made sense when the Saints signed him last year because you got him on a 1-year deal, so super affordable. When you signed him last year, he was only 26 years old. So 26 years old, former first-round pick, 1-year deal, super affordable, had been a starter in the league. And remember, he had been in Oakland and Las Vegas with Derek Carr. And last year, there was this just parade of former Raiders that the Saints signed. With Derek Carr, you also signed Foster Moreau, and you signed Brian Edwards, and you signed Lynn Bowden, and, of course, you signed Johnathan Abram. So, I mean, it was like they would just go to Derek Carr. Hey, what did you think about this guy? Do you want this guy? Do you want this guy? And so it was like if you signed him, Derek Carr vouched for him, and so it made sense. I mean, you invested in Carr as the leader of your team, and so if he's okay with a guy that was a former teammate, bringing him in, you just, okay, boom, rubber stamp. So I love this. I mean, for all the reasons we just said, he's a guy that's proven he can be a starter for you. He's proven he can be a special teams player for you. He can be a rotational piece. He's a good teammate, good team guy. He's affordable. We don't know the terms of the contract as of right now. So yes. I have one question. I have one big question as it pertains to the Saints signing Johnathan Abram. Are you done at safety? That's my question. And I don't know the answer to that. Now, there was an ESPN piece where they looked at available free agents, and one of them suggested Justin Simmons as a free agent target for New Orleans. And look, Justin Simmons is interesting because he's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum of a guy like Johnathan Abram. Simmons has been, like, he never had that lull in his career. Simmons is a guy who signed a $60 million contract with Denver and was just released this year as a cap casualty. He's 30 years old, still a very good player, and he's been a great player in his career. I mean, I don't want to compare him directly to Jamal Adams because Adams has been an all-pro, like, it was a top 10 pick in the draft. But when you look at available safeties, and I'm looking right now at Spotrac, they've got Jamal Adams as the best available safety and Justin Simmons the second best available safety. Eddie Jackson, Quandre Diggs, Micah Hyde, Tracy Walker, then Marcus May. So there's some really well-known safeties out there. I guess for me, it's a two-part question. If you're going to add another safety, because right now you got Tyrann Mathieu, Johnathan Abram, and Jordan Howden, who you drafted last year out of Minnesota in the 5th round, if you remember. Ugo Amadi, who is a special teamer and a backup for you. He's a free agent, so you could re-sign Ugo Amadi as well. And, of course, you got JT Gray, who's your special teams ace, but is listed as a safety, but really he's just your special teams ace who can contribute if you have injuries or you need someone in a spot. Are you convinced Johnathan Abram can be your starting strong safety, or are you going to sign one in free agency or draft one? And for me, I mentioned Spotrac. They have Justin Simmons, his market value, at 2 years, $22 million, so an average annual value of $11 million. For a 30-year-old safety, that feels a bit high. But if you get max value Justin Simmons, that's a bargain. So for the Saints, do you want to walk down the same road you kind of just did with Marcus May? Or that you did 2 years ago with Tyrann Mathieu? Because that's a tale of two different stories. You went and signed guys who've been really productive safeties who are no longer with their team. They were free agents. And you signed two guys. One of them was a bit younger, Tyrann a bit older. Tyrann's been great in New Orleans. He's not all-pro caliber, but he's been available. I mean, he's been out on the field every game. He was your leading tackler a year ago. He's been a really productive player for you. And then the other, Marcus May, was a bust. So what do you get out of Justin Simmons? The other option is, do you go draft a safety again like you did with Jordan Howden? Only this time do you draft a starting caliber safety. Like, I don't think you're going safety at 14 because I don't know if there's a player available at 14 that's going to make sense. But is there a player in round 2 at safety that you covet who could be a starter? The same way you did when you drafted Marcus Williams out of Utah. I mean, you drafted him in round 2. He became a really good starter for you. And then you just couldn't afford him in free agency, and he left and signed a great deal with Baltimore and has continued to be a great safety. I mean, tangentially, it's a random aside that one thing that's infuriating about the Saints is they've just paid the wrong players. I mean, you let Trey Hendrickson and Marcus Williams get out of the building. You signed Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and look at what happened to you. I mean, you paid the wrong players. So, I mean, I get it. I wasn't mad at them when they paid Alvin Kamara or Michael Thomas, but this is part and parcel with strategically why the way the Saints go about doing business, restructuring contracts, hurts you, because now you're sitting here having this question instead of just looking back there and going, hey, we got Marcus Williams, we're good. So my contention is, if you can get a player like Justin Simmons affordably, then you do it. You absolutely add someone who can make you better on the back end by their presence. And if best case scenario, you got a really affordable Johnathan Abram, beats him out, or Jordan Howden, who's on a rookie deal. Great. That's a best case scenario if it works out that way. But I would like another starting caliber safety on the roster to replace Marcus May. You made it work last week, so you can make it work with Tyrann Mathieu and Johnathan Abram, Jordan Howden. You can make it work with those guys. But you're a turned ankle away, you're a bum knee away from really being in a bind. So, yes, I think you need to add one more. And if you can do it with an affordable veteran free agent like Justin Simmons, who's got a history as a starter in the league, that would make a lot of sense. So I'd be for it. But re-signing Johnathan Abram is 100% absolute, no doubt, no-brainer. Glad to have him back in New Orleans. Okay, y'all, we're brought to you by Shawbill's Tire and Auto Service, shawbillstire.com. You know where to find them with 18 locations across South Louisiana. Go to shawbillstire.com, shawbillstire.com. You can find the location nearest you. You can schedule service online. You can shop tires online. Remember, at Shawbill's, their commitment is they will find you the best tires on the road at the cheapest price possible. As a matter of fact, they guarantee it. That's part of the Charlie's dozen. So when I tell you cheaper than the box stores, the membership clubs, other tire stores, they mean it. They're going to get you the best tires on the road at the cheapest price possible. If you buy tires at Shawbill's and within 30 days you find those same tires advertised cheaper, they'll refund you 125% of the difference. That's their promise. It's at Shawbill's. Shawbill's Tire and Auto Service, shawbillstire.com. Shawbill's, where we keep you rolling. All right, y'all. It is After Further Review. Glad you're here. You can always email us, tweet us, text us in the 225-396-4400, 396-4400, 396-4400. There was one other bit of Saints news just very quickly. I guess this is former Saints news. Michael Thomas will enter a pretrial diversion program, so he won't face trial on those 2 misdemeanor charges. If you remember back in November, outside his home in Kenner, Michael Thomas had an altercation with a construction worker who alleged Michael Thomas pushed him and threw a brick at his car. Well, Thomas's attorney says that never actually happened, that it was an argument between a construction worker and an employee, and whatever. The bottom line is it's not going to go to trial, and Thomas will enter a pretrial diversion program. So as long as he does what he's supposed to do, then the charges will, the 2 misdemeanor charges will go away instead of facing trial. So Michael Thomas can try to get on with his career and his life post the New Orleans Saints, and clearing this up is a part of it. So that's the latest, just as that story advances. Okay, it's After Further Review. Let me knock out a quick break. We'll come back. We'll go around the SEC. Glad you're hanging around. It's AFR.
AFR.
Y'all, tomorrow is our second to last Friday in Lent. Of course, next Friday is Good Friday. But if you are going to be looking for a seafood option, remember, you can always find it over at Rouse's, the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Rouse's.com, Rouse's.com. Of course, you can download the Rouse's app, as we always tell you. But remember, when you go into Rouse's, all you got to do is go immediately to your left, and you'll see the hot and boiled kiosk. They have boiled crawfish, boiled shrimp, crabs, lobster over there as well. If you want a piece of fish from the seafood market that you want to take home and broil or bake or grill, you could do that as well. They always have great options at Rouse's. They got sushi. Rouse's is the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints, so we always encourage you, to support a great local company that supported our community for darn near 100 years. It's Rouse's, the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Rouse's, this feels like home.
After further review with Matt Moscona. After further review with Matt Moscona.
One of the big stories in college football is that Clemson sued the ACC a couple of days ago to try to get out of the grant of rights. You probably saw that story. And for those that don't know, just as a very, very, very quick catch-up, I think most everybody understands this, but just quickly for the benefit of those that don't. Of course, there's going to be a new college football playoff, an expanded 12-team playoff with new revenue distribution, which is weighted very heavily toward the SEC and the Big Ten. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to get like $21 million a year per school. The ACC and the Big 12 are going to get $13 million and $12 million respectively. So there's a massive gap there.
And the real problem for Clemson and Florida State, who's also sued the ACC, is they want out of the league, but they signed this grant rights, so they can't get out of the league. And if they did leave, there's a massive exit fee. And remember, grant rights means that league owns your broadcast rights for the duration of the contract. So even if Clemson, let's say Clemson leaves the ACC, they'd have to pay a massive buyout, and the ACC would retain Clemson's broadcast rights. So like if you're the SEC, why would you take Clemson? Because you wouldn't own their broadcast rights. You'd have to pay them a share for something they're not contributing to. All that money would go to the ACC. So there's no incentive. So that's why Clemson and Florida State are suing. Well, the ACC is now countersued Clemson. And I don't know how this is going to go, and about the sacred cows in college football. If you listen to the show, that's one thing that should be abundantly clear over the decade plus that we've had this conversation. My contention for a long time has been college football is broken. We love college football because we love our team and the pageantry associated with our team and the rivalries that have been created, or what football Saturdays feel like and mean to us. We don't love it because of college football, all the stupid intangible things that they try to tell you, like the sacred regular season and the Rose Bowl and the sunset over the San Andreas Mountains, or whatever those mountains are. I don't even care what mountains they are. The point is, like, it's all baloney. It's been force-fed to us all for years and years and years and years and years, and it's all coming to a head now because it was all built around really nothing but, like, rich dudes getting richer. Like, that's it, on the backs of free labor. That's what college football has been, and they've maintained that structure by forcing all of all this intangible nonsense on all of us that many of us took hook, line, and sinker and have forever. College football, sacred regular season, which is crap. It's actually the most meaningless regular season. It's the only sport ever where you can win every game you play and not have a chance to play in a playoff. That doesn't make it great. That makes it fundamentally flawed. So anyway, we love college football in spite of itself. And what I've said forever, and you know this, is we're headed to one college football where all of the powers that be will just compete against each other. There will be massive separation among the top 50 and the rest of college football. 50 is a round number I'm just throwing out. Maybe it's a buy-in where, here's what it costs to be in this super league. If you can afford it, you're in. If you're not, you're not. And that's where we're headed. And so the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten, as we know, like, none of that's going to matter in time anyway. So my point is, I don't really care what happens with Clemson and Florida State and the ACC and suing. I just laugh at the irony. And I know a lot of people misuse the word irony. This is true irony. So the ACC, the membership of the ACC, when all of the tumult was happening in college football, when the SEC accepted Texas and Oklahoma, two years ago when that announcement came, what the ACC did in trying to protect itself was they signed a long-term grant rights TV deal through 2036. So all the membership of the ACC, this is what they did. They go, okay, we're all together, right? Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12. The Big 12 is going to be screwed. The SEC just got stronger. We're all together, right? Nobody's leaving. Here's how we're going to show our solidarity. We're going to sign a contract that locks us all together for the next 15 years through 2036. And it's ironclad and nobody can leave because nobody's going to give up their grant and rights for a decade and so on. That's the thing that was supposed to save the ACC, was that this was so ironclad that nobody could leave. And so the league wouldn't get pillaged. Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina wouldn't leave because financially they couldn't leave. Well, the thing that they did, this grant and rights, this contract that they signed to save the league, is ultimately the thing that's going to kill it. That, my friends, is the definition of irony. The thing you did, the action you took to save your league, is the thing that has now boxed you into this crappy TV deal for the next decade while the SEC and the Big Ten keep getting richer and richer and richer, and you stay put. That gap is only going to continue to widen because the ACC is stuck at this number, and the SEC and the Big Ten have now forced the number higher, and they're only going to keep growing.
And that gap between the two power leagues and everybody else is just going to get massive. And you could legitimately see a world where, like, the Big 12 surpasses the ACC because they're not locked. They have new membership coming in. They're not locked into this awful grant rights deal through 2036. So, listen, by the time 2036 comes along, I would surmise that we will have a completely different structure of college football. Like, what we have now isn't going to last for another dozen years. But it will certainly mean the dissolution of the ACC as we know it, and quite honestly, all the leagues as we know it. So I don't care what happens with the lawsuit with Clemson and the ACC and suing each other and who wins and what, because we're headed for an inevitability. How we get there and whatever steps these take to get to that path, we're still heading toward an inevitable end, right? You're throwing the ball down the lane at the bowling alley. Look, whether you got bumpers up or it goes in the gutter. The ball's heading toward the gutter either way. The ball's heading toward the pins either way. I mean, that's where we're headed. It's just a matter of do you go straight down the middle? Do you bounce off the bumpers? Do you go in the gutter? And do you go down the gutter and then pop out and hit a few pins? I don't know. But you're heading for one direction no matter what. All right, it's After Further Review. We're glad to have you hanging out with us here. Love telling you about Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. Windows, doors, siding, Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. Energy-efficient replacement windows, beautiful entry doors, hardy plank vinyl siding. They do it all. They do it better than anyone. It's Relief Windows. Give Brandon Holly and the gang a shout. You know, one of the things I started endorsing Relief Windows in 2014, so it's been 10 years. I've endorsed Relief Windows for 10 years. And in 10 years, you have never, not once, ever heard me mention price. Ever. And there's a reason for that. Because with Relief Windows, you're buying premium product. You're buying a premium experience. You're never going to hear me talk about this great sale, this great discount. Shop us against other brands. Because if all you're doing is looking to buy the cheapest windows, like what contractor is going to give me the cheapest price? Remember, you get what you pay for. And with Relief Windows, you get beautiful windows. You get an exceptional customer service experience. You never pay $1 until they're done and you're thrilled. You have a lifetime transferable, say this again, lifetime transferable warranty on labor, material, and glass breakage. There's just nobody better than Relief Windows. Windows, doors, siding. Oh, yeah. They do indoor shutters as well. Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. I don't know if we have time for this. Okay, let's go around the SEC.
Around the SEC, bringing you the biggest news from the nation's best conference. The Alabama Crimson Tide.
Bama landed a commitment from linebacker Daryl Duke Johnson out of the state of Georgia. 4-star prospect, the number 3 linebacker in the country for the class of 2025. He's the number 28 overall player in the country. Oh, the Bammers, probably all of them. Twitter mentions on that one.
The South Carolina Gamecocks.
A former Alabama head coach, Mike Schuler, remember him? He's going to be an offensive analyst at South Carolina this season under Shane Beamer. Gamecocks offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins said Schuler, who most recently was on the Buffalo Bills staff, joined the program, was with the team as it opened spring football on Tuesday of this week. Shula, of course, is the son of the late NFL all-time wins leader, Don Shula.
The Arkansas Razorbacks.
And our Kansas guard, Layden Blocker, has entered the NCAA transfer portal. As a freshman this season, he'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Blocker played in 27 games. He started 5 for our Kansas this year as a true freshman. Averaged just 4 points a game. He's the 5th Arkansas player to enter the portal since the end of this basketball season. All right, there you have it. That is Around the SEC. Glad to have you aboard with us here on this Thursday edition of AFR. I guess I should mention just a quick look in at the SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State got walloped by Michigan State earlier today in an 8-9 matchup. Michigan State won that one 69-51. South Carolina and Oregon currently underway. They're on TNT. They're in the first half there, and Oregon with a 1-point lead, 23-22. Tonight, Oakland takes on Kentucky, Tennessee, and St. Peter's also tonight. And then tomorrow, you've got Auburn against Yale. You've got Florida against Colorado. A&M, Nebraska, and Alabama against the College of Charleston. That's all tomorrow. All right, it's after further review. Let me knock out our final break of hour number 1. We're glad you're here. It's AFR.
AFR.
Get Gordon and get it done. Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys. You know where to find them online at getgordon.com, getgordon.com. Our friends over at Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys, man, they do great work for people all over the state of Louisiana. And I should mention that, no matter where you're listening to us, because I know a lot of you, maybe you listen on 100.3 ESPN New Orleans or Alexandria's 94.7 ESPN or ESPN 103.7 Lafayette, 104.1 Lake Charles, or maybe you listen on our stream or watch us on YouTube, wherever you are in the state of Louisiana. Remember, if you're in an accident, it's not your fault, you need representation, get Gordon and get it done. Call 888-8888. Same number, any office all over the state, 888-8888. So 888-8888, or go to getgordon.com, getgordon.com. Look, I went through this a couple of years ago in an accident where I was rear-ended, had a lot of damage to my car. There was a lot going on. Don't go it alone. Get great representation. Make sure you go to getgordon.com. Get Gordon and get it done.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
All right, wrapping up hour number 1. Of course, the men's tournament starts today. The women's tournament will get underway on Friday. Of course, here locally, Kim Mulkey and the Tigers will take on Rice in their first round game. Our first 2 rounds, should they win in advance, will be there at the Maravich Center. But as you look ahead to the bracket, LSU's path might have gotten inadvertently a little bit easier. This is super disappointing.
just on a human level. So Liz Kitley, if you remember watching the women's Final Four a year ago, LSU in the Final Four played Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's center was Liz Kitley. She listed as a forward, 6'6" forward. They're big. Their post is Liz Kitley, who's the 3-time ACC Player of the Year and a 3-time first-team All-American. Well, Liz Kitley tore her ACL in their regular season finale, so her career is over. She came back. She took advantage of the COVID year and came back for a 5th year of college basketball to try to get Virginia Tech over the hump to win a national championship, and had another great season, Big East Player of the Year, first-team All-American, and tore her ACL in the last game of the regular season. So her career is over, and she's not going to get to participate in the NCAA tournament. That just again, on a human level, God, that just sucks royally. I feel so bad for that young lady. I think anybody on any level can relate to that. And she was, by the way, she was having the best year of her career. She averaged nearly 23 points a game, 11 rebounds, and over 2 blocks per game. So statistically, it was the best year of her career, of her very story-decorated career as well. So, Angel Reese and Liz Kitley went toe-to-toe last year in that Final Four game where, of course, LSU won to advance to the championship game, and Iowa and Caitlin Clark beat South Carolina, of course, on their half of the bracket to advance to the championship game, and we know how that all went. As it pertains specifically to LSU moving forward, LSU and Iowa are on the same side. You probably know this, but if you haven't looked at the bracket, so LSU and Iowa are on the same side of the bracket. If they were to play, Iowa's the 1 seed, LSU's the 3. They would play in the Elite 8. If a matchup were to happen, LSU and Iowa, so Caitlin Clark and Iowa would play against LSU in an Elite 8 game should it come to that. If LSU were to advance, they would face Virginia Tech again in the Final Four. Again, should both teams, that's all hypothetical, if both teams continue to advance. And then South Carolina on the other side of the bracket, should LSU make it to the championship game, in theory, South Carolina would be there waiting for them. Long way to go for all these teams involved, but if you were just looking at potential matchups down the road, that's how it would look. It would be Caitlin Clark and Iowa in the Elite 8, a Virginia Tech team without Liz Kitley in the Final Four, and then South Carolina in the championship game. But it's going to be much more difficult now for Virginia Tech to get there without their 3-time Conference Player of the Year, 3-time All-American Liz Kitley, her career is over, torn ACL. That's just devastating for her. You feel so bad. Man, you remember that game a year ago where Angel Reese was magnificent. She had 24 points and 12 rebounds against Virginia Tech. Liz Kitley had 18 and 12 and got into foul trouble, if you recall, in that ball game. But ended up she did finish the game and ended up playing the full 40 minutes for Virginia Tech. But her career's done. It's after further review. We're brought to you by Lee Michaels Fine Jewelry, lmfj.com, lmfj.com for Lee Michaels Fine Jewelry. They're the best. Tell you about Lee Michaels every day, and I love telling you about Lee Michaels every day because, man, this is just a great Louisiana company. Lee Michaels has been in business for 40 years, helping Louisianians get engaged. 2 locations in Baton Rouge, Corporate Boulevard in Bocage, Mall of Louisiana. They've got their New Orleans location, Lafayette location, Shreveport location. So really, no matter where you are around the state of Louisiana, you've got a Lee Michaels near you. And one thing that I got to stress is they will never sell you man-made or lab diamonds. A lot of people think, I can get a bigger stone because it's man-made. But what are you buying? What are you buying? When you buy a diamond from Lee Michaels, you are buying a diamond from one of the finest diamond mines in the world. Every single ring, every single piece of jewelry, every diamond is hand inspected by a family member before it goes into the case. And you never have to doubt the quality of what you're getting at Lee Michaels. Of course, you'll always get the Lee Michaels experience. lmfj.com, lmfj.com for Lee Michaels Fine Jewelry. Okay, y'all, it is after further review. We're glad you're here with us. In about 20 minutes from right now, Mike Triplett is going to be with us. Looking forward to visiting with Mike. We do it every week during the NFL season, but haven't had a chance to talk to Mike in a while, so got to get his thoughts on free agency and where the Saints are right now. And also,
at the start of hour number 3, so a little more than an hour from right now, our buddy Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball is going to be with us. Always love our chances to visit with Kendall. We'll preview the weekend ahead in the SEC, including LSU's bounce-back opportunity with the Florida Gators coming into the box. Hour number 3 coming up right after SportsCenter.
AFR.
It's actually hour number 2 coming up after SportsCenter. I wish it were hour 3, but it's not. One thing I also wish is that every one of you would call the Williamson Eye Center. If you wear contacts or glasses, call the Williamson Eye Center. Even if you don't, call the Williamson Eye Center, because remember, at the Williamson Eye Center, they're not just eye surgery. They are eye care, eyewear, and eye surgery. They're an all-inclusive optical shop, a vision center. So if you need your annual eye exam, and everyone should get your annual eye exam, call the Williamson Eye Center. If you wear contacts or glasses, you need that prescription upgraded or updated, you want some new lens, the Williamson Eye Center can help in their optical shop. Or, and most importantly, if you want to throw away those contacts and glasses forever, by the way, over time, a more cost-beneficial option, instead of continuing to buy new contact lenses and everything, month after month, year after year, go for that consultation at the Williamson Eye Center. 924-2020 for the Williamson Eye Center.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Doug Brown. Duquesne coach Keith Dambrot announced his retirement earlier this week, but he's not done yet. The Dukes, the 11 seed in the East, beat BYU today 71-67. Day Grant with 19 points to lead the way. It's Duquesne's first NCAA tournament win since 1969. Other first-round scores today, North Carolina beats Wagner 90-62. R.J. Davis with 22. Creighton beats Akron 77-60. All 5 starters in double figures, accounting for all 77 Blue Jays points. A slugfest in South Korea today for the Padres and the Dodgers.
And the pitch is hammered in the air to deep left field. Way back off the scoreboard and left. A long home run for Machado. It's a 3-run homer, and the lead is reinflated. Padres up 15-11.
That was the final. The call on 97.3 The Fan. The Padres split the 2-game Seoul series.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Kenny. Have you filled out your women's bracket yet? No? Well, you still have time, so don't panic as we're here to help. It's Unsportsmanlike, 6 a.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge Studios.
Let's ride.
Hour 2, off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. It's AFR. I'm Matt.
You're a loser, Matt!
Hey, shut up, kid. Paul O'Neill.
They're chanting Paul O'Neill's name.
Yusuf. And Mr. Toby Tomplay. All right, we're here. Glad you are as well. Get out there, make it a good one. Our buddy Mike Triplett here, less than 15 minutes from right now. Always look forward to having Mike T on the show. We'll get to that here in just a bit. There was a lot of people who have asked me about the Caden Proctor story. So if you're not familiar, Caden Proctor, a big-time offensive lineman, he was a 5-star who is from the state of Iowa, was a long-time Iowa commit. Flipped to Alabama, started every game at Alabama as a freshman last year at left tackle. After the season, of course, when Nick Saban retired, Proctor went into the portal, transferred to Iowa. He's been there at Iowa for the past couple months, and now this weekend announced he's leaving Iowa and going back to Alabama. I really don't care. I mean, I guess some people would ask me just because of all the Bama is burning stuff that I did. I'm genuinely disinterested in like one offensive lineman, as great as he is, going back to the University of Alabama. What's the proverbial hay is in the barn with respect to Bama. They lost 33 players via the portal, more than any other school in the country. Their roster's been gutted. Congratulations, you salvaged one offensive lineman. Anyway, like, I don't think Bama's going to be an awful team. My contention remains they're going to get commits. They're going to get guys out of the portal. They're just not going to be anything close to what they were. That's the premise of the whole Bama is burning thing. Specifically with respect to Caden Proctor, though, like this is going to surprise some of you. I am so bullishly on board with Proctor having the opportunity to leave Iowa and go back to Alabama. And it actually kind of, I find it kind of comical, the standard to which adult people are trying to hold college athletes, let me not say kids, college athletes, that they don't hold adult people to the same standard. Did you see what happened this weekend with Troy Dannon? So Troy Dannon, if you're not familiar, was Washington's athletic director, who just left Washington to become the athletic director
at Nebraska because Trev Albert, who was a Nebraska alum, by the way, left Nebraska to become Texas A&M's athletic director. And you might say, yeah, well, adults leave jobs. True, they do. They do. Except Troy Dannon has only been the AD at Washington for 5 months. He went from Tulane to Washington, where he was there for 5 months. Now he's going to Nebraska. How in the world are you going to hold a college student athlete to a higher standard than an adult human? And if you try to give me some nonsense about, well, they're adults and they're professionals and they have a family, none of that matters. If anything, the adult professional, I would tell you, you have more of a commitment because you have a contract. You sign a 2, 3, 4, 5-year contract that when you leave, you are breaking that contract. You are dishonoring your commitment in the contract you signed. And this isn't just Troy Dannon, an athletic director. You remember Lance Guidry last year? Lance Guidry was the DC at Marshall. He gets hired by Tulane. Before he ever coaches a game, Miami hires him. He's the DC at the U under Mario Cristobal. By the way, that's how LSU got Andre Sam. Andre Sam was at Marshall, followed his DC to Tulane, and when his DC went to Miami, he said, all right, I'll go to LSU. That's a two-way street, y'all. It will benefit you, and it will hurt you. But the bottom line is, anybody that's trying to criticize Caden Proctor for leaving Bama, going to Iowa, then going back to Bama, why aren't you holding adult people who have actual contracts, signed contracts, to that same standard? It's why I have always been so bullishly supportive of student athletes. NIL, transfer portal, all of it. Because the system upon which college football has been built for 100 years is completely fraudulent. We love college football in spite of itself. And now it is all coming to a head. All of it. It is all. The curtain has been pulled back. The light has been shown upon the dark crevices where all of the slimy underbelly of college football has just festered for a century. And everyone is seeing the truth for what it is. But you know what's not going to change? And this ultimately is the biggest point of all this. When LSU lines up against USC in Las Vegas and they tee it up and kick it off, you're not going to give a single gosh darn about any of that stuff I just said. None of it. You know what you're going to care about? Tigers, Trojans. The garnet and gold, the purple and gold. That's what you're going to care about. Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, the last two Heisman Trophy winners, gigantic spot in an NFL stadium, the entire country watching the Sunday before Labor Day, the opening weekend of college football. That's all you're going to care about. You're not going to care about NIL or transfer portal or how long your left defensive end has been with your pro. You're not going to care about any of it. Because the thing we love is college football, is what happens between the white lines and the bragging rights it gives us and all that sort of stuff. That has nothing to do with how long someone's been or transfer portal or NIL or any of that stuff. It all goes out the window once the ball's teed up and kicked off. Everyone that talks about, well, you're eroding what made college football great. Really? Is that why ESPN just signed like a $13 billion TV contract for the college football playoff? Because nobody's going to watch? Give me a break. Stop holding college athletes to a higher standard than you're holding adult people that sign contracts, that sit in living rooms, that make promises to student athletes and their families. Why are we holding 18 to 22-year-olds to a higher standard than the adult people that are paid very well to oversee and guide them? We all be better. All right. It's After Further Review. We're brought to you by South Point Volkswagen, southpointvw.com. New and certified pre-owned in Baton Rouge and online at southpointvw.com. I always say new and certified pre-owned. Remember, if you're in the market for a new vehicle and you've never driven a Volkswagen, you probably know someone like this. Like I have a buddy, shout out Dave, who he's a VW guy. Has always driven VWs. I had never driven a Volkswagen until 15 years ago when I started endorsing South Point. I said, before I do this, I want to drive every vehicle, like every single model. I want to drive them all. And I fell in love. And that's all Eric and I have driven now since then. They look great. They perform great from gas mileage and all the features and everything. Reliability. The safety is what I always tell you about. My goodness, and they're affordable as well. Right now, you can get 0% for 60 months. 60 months, it's 5 years. 0% for 60 months on a brand new Tiguan. That's a compact SUV. Test drive one today at South Point Volkswagen, Louisiana's largest volume Volkswagen dealer. Airline just north of Highlander, southpointvw.com. South Point Volkswagen, what's your direction? All right, y'all. Glad you're aboard with us here. Mike Triplett coming up in about 5 minutes from right now. We'll look forward to having Mike Triplett here. We'll talk a little bit about the Saints. If you missed it, the Saints did sign a free agent safety, Johnathan Abram, who was with the team this past year, played exceptionally well given the nature of the contract, and the former first-round pick was a very welcomed and pleasant surprise when Marcus May was both suspended and injured for the bulk of the 2023 season. So Mike Triplett coming up here shortly. We will let you hear more of what Jay Johnson had to say previewing the LSU-Florida series coming up at the box this weekend. And about 50 minutes from right now, right at the start of hour number 3, Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball will be with us. We'll preview the weekend ahead in the Southeastern Conference on the Diamond. So a lot to do, and glad you're here. Stick with us. It's AFR.
AFR. It's a Raving fan shout-out. Presented by Darren James, brokered by LPT Realty.
Boy, I was chatting with my guy Darren James earlier today, and there is just no one better. And how about this Raving fan shout-out from Tricia O'Neill, who said, Darren worked with us and explained each step along the process of selling our home. He and his staff were always available to answer any question we had. Another Raving fan, another 5-star review of Darren James and Associates, brokered by LPT Realty. I tell you all the time, the Wall Street Journal Real Trends list, the list of the top 1% of realtors in America. Last year, Darren James, number 54 on the list. Keep in mind, that's the top 1,000 realtors in America. Darren James, number 54 in the country. Objective data. Why would you hire anyone else? Buying or selling commercial or residential. You need a realtor. You need Darren James.
Think real estate. Think Darren James.
after further review with Matt Moscona.
Mike!
Yeah?
Saints coverage with some Mad Libs mixed in.
Why don't you just go by Mike?
It's time to talk black and gold with Mike Triplett of New Orleans Football. Presented by Benny's Car Wash. Family owned and operated since 1951.
We didn't necessarily have to play the intro. I just missed it. And I missed talking to Mike. I'm glad he's here. How are you, man?
What do you mean you didn't have to play the intro?
What?
I would have walked off the stat.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for your commitment. But, I mean, technically, that's the intro for when we have you during the season, weekly.
Okay.
And this is just you being very generous and coming aboard with us here because, we wanted to talk to you today. So...
All right, I got you.
Yeah.
We need a different song for like the magnanimity of me just volunteering my time.
Do you want to run that one back one more time? I don't know
that word.
Jerusalem,
I would have to use spell check. There's no spell check on radio, my friend.
That is very true. Or in Mad Libs. So you better get together with that.
That's true.
Hey, so let me start with just the most current thing on the timeline, which is the Saints signed Johnathan Abram. Which isn't going to be any big-time news, but they did need help at safety after they let Marcus May fly. Are they done at safety, or do you anticipate them adding maybe like a big-ticket item at safety?
No, I don't expect a big-ticket item at safety. I think that was part of the philosophy behind releasing Marcus May, who was due $7.5 million, and frankly, the same philosophy that seems to be shared by every team in the NFL right now. I mean, there are some good ones out there, Justin Simmons and Jamal Adams. It's not a good time to be an NFL safety right now financially, but it feels like the Saints are being very budget conscious. I don't want to just say that they are because of what they've done so far, because the next thing you know, they just spend it all. Their history shows us that they will do things like that. But it feels like they're being very budget conscious, and safety certainly feels like a position that the whole league has stopped spending money on. So I would be very surprised. Now, bargains shake out in the third week of free agency, and that's what they like to spend on. I mean, you remember the year a couple years ago, we thought they had done nothing, and then all of a sudden they added Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry very late in the process and got everyone excited. Someone like Justin Simmons has to settle for a prove-it 1-year, $9 million deal. Do they get in on something like that? I can't rule it out. But I don't think they're poised to make a big splash really anywhere. I think they're looking for more bargains.
Man, a prove-it deal with Justin Simmons would feel like a no-brainer. What about same question at defensive end after they add Chase Young?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, we were talking about this on the show, and this is something I hope they're not doing right now. I hope they're not just signing 33-year-old guys to 1-year deals that, with limited upside to help push them over the top this year, like Jadeveon Clowney or something like that. The thing I do like about the Chase Young deal is there's so much upside. They're taking a risk on something that could turn into something more for their future. And so I doubt they just, they do have a lot of guys. I mean, they have Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan and now Chase Young and Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey and Tano Passanio, a lot of guys who we don't know what they're going to be, but I don't think they just need a warm body. I do think it could absolutely still be where they go in round one of the draft, though.
What would be a Mike Triplett's with us, New Orleans Football. My contention is they got to go offensive line at 14, provided they stay there. What scenarios, as you sort of brainstorm, do you think could play out there at 14?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's the biggest need. They have needs all over their roster, but I think offensive tackle is number one. I mean, if they drafted a defensive end there, it's hard to argue with. If they drafted Brock Bowers there, it'd be hard to argue with. But the reason I think offensive tackle is the biggest need is they have a hole in their lineup now, but they have major question marks for the future too. When you throw in Ryan Ramczyk's injury, and we don't know what Trevor Penning is going to be, and if they brought back Andrus Peat or plugged in James Hurst there, they're obviously temporary Band-Aids, but also just the talent available. I mean, there is a good chance that they're going to have an offensive tackle ranked very high on their board, since there are about 6 or 7 of them expected to go in the top 25 of this year's draft. So that feels like a perfect marriage. But I think the most important thing for the Saints is they need to rebuild the talent on this roster, period. I mean, there are not a lot of young blue chip players on this roster. If we rank their top 10 players, I think we'd come up with 2 young guys and 8 guys in their 30s. I might be exaggerating, but only a little. So anyone they have a good grade on. If it's a receiver, if it's a corner, anyone that they're like, we think this guy's going to be an perennial Pro Bowler, they just need guys like that to rebuild their foundation. So they can't get pigeonholed into filling a temporary need.
So it's funny you're saying like you hope they don't just get stuck paying 30-year-olds with limited upside. I was going to ask the same question about receiver because you look and you say, okay, well, Odell's out there and Allen Robinson's out there and Michael Gallup, Hunter Renfrow. I mean, Mike, it feels like this is the only thing they can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of down with it. It's very boring. It's hard to sell, but this is really what they're doing. I mean, I think it's kind of what people have been clamoring for. Like, realize what you are. Realize you're a 500 team that, if things go well, can be a 10-win team, but don't go all in and overboard to invest in that. So, they're not spending $8 million on their backup quarterback. They're not spending $7.5 million on a average starting safety. Like that's where they're cutting their costs. And the investments are, Willie Gay Jr. has some upside. Chase Young has some upside. I'm a little torn on what I want, like a Tyler Boyd to fill that void. I just would be very surprised to see them spend real money on an Odell or an Allen Robinson type. And that is actually the one position on the roster where I feel like they do have some young talent. So maybe they draft Brian Thomas because he's the highest rated player on their board at 14. But that is actually the one position where they have young talent. So Hunter Renfrow wouldn't surprise me, though. Like anyone who could potentially stick around beyond this year if things pan out wouldn't surprise me, I think.
All right, he's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, of course, NewOrleans.football. So you said they're not going to spend $8 million on a backup quarterback. We know the direction they've gone there with Peterman, and you've still got Jake Haener. Is it one of those guys? If I asked you maybe week 1, who is backing up Derek Carr, who would you say?
Yeah, I mean, you have to say Haener's the odds-on favorite right now. I mean,
okay.
I was a little surprised they didn't. There were so many backups available this year in that Jameis Winston, Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, it's funny, they all switch teams. Gardner Minshew switches teams, and then Joe Flacco switches teams, and then I don't know why nobody kept their own backup quarterback. But I thought there was so much to choose from that they pay $4 or $5 million for somebody because we've seen them do that in recent years with Andy Dalton and Jameis, but they did trade up for Jake Haener in the 4th round of last year's draft, and they are trying to save some money, and that's the place to do. He should be able to win that job. I thought they'd at least bring in somebody just a little bit more proven in recent years, like even if it was Trevor Siemian or something like that. Then
please not again. No. That ship has sailed, Mike. Do not let that ship circle back to port, please.
Right, but Peterman's pretty uninspiring for that position, but I get it. That I'm glad they didn't spend a bunch of money on Ryan Tannehill and then hope he never played or something like that.
Are we just hoping that Jake Haener is because we saw the Brock Purdy thing in San Francisco, like the undersized guy who was a late round pick who they turned into a guy who was better than anybody thought? Like, is that just the subconscious or the conscious thought here with Haener?
I don't know if I would say that for sure. I mean, okay. I'm trying to remember what is it? Nathan Rourke was the rookie who played okay as Trevor Lawrence's backup. Tyson Bagent was a rookie for Chicago who came in and did a good job as a backup. It doesn't have to be Brock Purdy, but can Jake Haener be a younger, cheaper version of Taylor Heineke than going out and signing the actual Taylor Heineke and having to pay him real money? I think that's where our thoughts are. Brock Purdy would be nice, but I don't know if we're aiming that high.
Look, I don't know, Mike. I don't know that in all the years you and I have talked, I've ever been lower on the Saints than I am right now.
mean, do you see a path forward for this team that doesn't involve the escalator down? I mean, tell me if you feel different, Mike, but it just feels like they're just on the escalator down, and eventually it's going to bottom out. They're not going to be able to deny where they are in the NFL pecking order. And they're going to have to start getting younger and rebuild, which I know they don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, the only counter argument to that is I don't think you have to bottom out to make that your plan. And we've talked about this a lot. I mean, we use the Detroit Lions as a really good example of you still have to nail a bunch of draft picks. Whether you do it the Carolina Panthers way and you say, no, we're going to actually have the worst record in the league 2 years in a row while, rebuilding with draft picks. Someone like Detroit never totally bottomed out. They kept Jared Goff as their quarterback, and they hit on Aiden Hutchinson, and they hit on Penei Sewell, and they hit on some skill position players, and they hired the right coaches, and they turned it around without doing the full. We're trading every player you've ever heard of off of our roster and compiling a bunch of draft picks to do it. So it is possible, but there is no way to do this without drafting better and compiling more draft picks. And they're really, obviously missing on Trevor Penning hurt so bad, because that would be really nice if you had your left tackle in place for the future and you didn't miss on that. You traded multiple draft picks to get Olave and Penning in here. You only hit on one of those two guys. And now this year they have a first and a second, and then no third and fourth. That really hurts. So I just don't want to see them trading multiple picks to move up for one guy. Like, we only need one more guy. They need a lot of guys, and I don't want to see them trading a lot of future picks for temporary players and stuff like that. Do they have to trade Marshawn Lattimore for whatever they can get for him, and trade Alvin Kamara for whatever they can get for him, and try to trade Demario Davis and completely bottom out? I don't think they necessarily have to do that. But that hope you're talking about will not be back in the fan base until they hit on a lot more Chris Olave types. They need 4 or 5 Chris Olave types in the pipeline, and not just one right now.
Say, man, I bet you my entire net worth that this team will make a pick in round 3 or 4. No way. There ain't no way they're just going to sit there and make 4 fifth-round picks. Not an ice cube's chance, and where. And they just draft all these guys.
That actually doesn't bother me, because once you're in day 3 of the draft, like, I don't mind if you give away a couple of your fifths to move up. That doesn't bother me as much, because I think you can find undrafted guys. I think you can find veterans who've fallen through the cracks, like Ike Adam and Johnathan Abram, and it doesn't have to be 5th-round picks to fill out your depth in the roster. I do not want to be trading future firsts.
Yeah,
that is
for sure.
Probably future seconds. And I probably don't want to package my first and second to move up for Dallas Turner. I really don't want to see them do that.
Yeah,
because they need more bodies, and that wasn't always the case. I did not mind their aggressive way they attacked the draft in a lot of years. There were a lot of years where 10 picks would have been worthless. They wouldn't have made the roster. The roster was too good. That is not the case anymore.
He is Mike Triplett, NewOrleans.football on Twitter, @Mike Triplett. Always appreciate it, man. Be well. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
It's our pleasure. All right, it's after further review. Let me knock out a quick break. We'll continue.
AFR.
Brought to you by River City's 1 Hour Air, where they're always on time or you don't pay a dime. 752-0001, 752-0001, 752-0001. Look for the big yellow vans and trucks with the giant clock on the side. They're all over town. You can't miss them because so many of your friends and neighbors trust River City's 1 Hour Air the same way that I do. It's River City's 1 Hour Air. Mary Jerome is another customer who left a 5-star Google review. Jason Mallett was very prompt and friendly. He was also very professional and thorough in performing his job. I would highly recommend. Go read the reviews. More than double the amount of 5-star Google reviews of their next closest competitor, because they've been around for 40 years, and service, their level of customer service is exceptional. I've talked about it for years. It's River City's 1 Hour Air. 752-0001. Make sure you call and get that preseason AC tune-up. 752-0001, where they're always on time or you don't pay a dime.
after further review with Matt Moscona.
Kendall Rogers will be here in 26 minutes, D1 Baseball. We're going to talk to Andrew Lopez as well in hour number 3. And I want to talk to Lopez, not specifically about the Pelicans. He's not even a Pelicans reporter anymore. He's sort of embedded with San Antonio because of Wemby. And it's so interesting because Lopez was hired by ESPN as the ESPN Pelicans reporter when they drafted Zion. And it was almost like, okay, well, you did that with Zion, go do it with Wemby. So they moved him to San Antonio, and he's on that beat. But I want to talk to Lopez more from a national NBA perspective, because that's a guy that's with a different team and is in a different arena every night and is seeing every team firsthand in this league. And while he may have some inherent bias, because he's from New Orleans and obviously covered the Pelicans and loves New Orleans and everything, I think I can ask him this question and get an honest answer. And the question is, are the Pelicans a legitimate NBA championship contender? I didn't say a lock. I didn't say a favorite. I said a contender. And we got to start having that conversation, because the top of the West doesn't look as daunting as it has in the past without a 73-win Warriors team there, or an closer to his prime LeBron and AD, right? You understand what I mean? Like, the top of the conference, you've had some flux. OKC and Denver are right there. What and what? Minnesota as well. You've had those three. And then the next cluster of the Clippers, Pels, Kings, Dallas, right? The Suns, that are all sort of right there, playing the same game. But how do you ignore the fact that this team is 8-2 in their last 10 and they are drubbing people? It looks like they're actually like hitting their stride and playing better. And they may win 50 games for the first time since 2008. And it's the example I always give. I was asked this morning, I was doing Morning Scone. For those that don't know, I do a daily live stream on my personal YouTube channel. And someone asked, hey, do you think New Orleans can ever become a Pelicans town? And the answer to that question is no. Like, they're never going to become a Pelicans first town. That city and its love affair with the New Orleans Saints will never be broken. The Saints will always be number one, no matter how bad that franchise is, or great, right? It's just, it will always be more interesting to everyone in that city. But that doesn't mean that there's no room to love the NBA franchise as well. But you got to win. It's like anything in life. Hey, do I need to rewind the clock 3 years to show you what the attendance at LSU women's basketball games was like before Kim Mulkey got here? Do I need to go remind you what LSU baseball was pre-1984 when Skip Bertman showed up? You win, you set roots, and they will follow. Let me take it outside of here. My entire life, there was nothing special at all about the Golden State Warriors. You know the only thing anybody knew about the Golden State Warriors? Chris Mullin. That was it. That was it. They hadn't won a championship since the 70s. Not in my lifetime. They drafted Steph, Clay, Draymond. You hit on some free agents like Iguodala. Boom. All of a sudden you become a dynasty. And now the Bay Area is Dubs obsessed. That doesn't mean the Niners still don't lead in the Bay Area. Of course they do. But you find room. And that can happen in New Orleans because I saw it happen in 2008. The problem is the success has been fleeting. You had a franchise player in Chris Paul and he left. You had a franchise player in AD and he left. Now you have what you hope is a franchise player in Zion who's getting better through his prime. But you got to win and do it consistently and let people get used to seeing you in the postseason and competing at the highest level. But the point I always bring up about 2008, y'all, is like that team, when they beat Dallas in the in the Western Conference quarters, and then they played San Antonio in the Western Conference semis, and that series went to 7 games, and you had Chris Paul, and you had David West, you had the Crescent City connection, Peja on a stick. Like, people were obsessed with that team. The games were sold out. It was a hell of a good time. We were having watch parties at Pluckers and sports bars, and they were packed to the gills. Like, yes, absolutely. People will support that team. Do I need to remind you that this state didn't love the New Orleans Saints pre-2006? A lot of people had other allegiances. Only when, post-Katrina, you brought in Peyton and Breeze, and in year one they went to the NFC Championship game, and then they win a Super Bowl. Only then did you set roots with young people in this state and convert the masses. You got your pockets of poser Cowboy fans and all that stuff in this state, whatever. But, like, it wasn't always that way, man. I was a kid who was born and raised, grew up in New Orleans. We moved to Baton Rouge. My whole family's from New Orleans. Diehard Saints fans. Moved to Baton Rouge. I go to school here. None of my classmates like the Saints. You don't see no Saints car flags around Baton Rouge in the early 90s. Saw a lot of bags on people's heads. Anyway, I don't want to lose the point. The point is, yeah, man, people in this state will support the NBA franchise. People will go to Pelicans games. You will set the hook. Now, there's a lot of other factors, like you got to get a better local TV deal, a better option for people to watch your game, your team night in and night out, because the Bally option. Listen, I'm a Cox subscriber, so I get Bally. I can watch them, but like, I give T-Bob my Cox login so he can watch the games because he has no way to see them. That's a problem, right? So there are issues that they have to resolve, and you get there. But number one is winning. Win, man, win. And not only they're winning right now, I mean, they're 42-26. I mean, you got 20 games to go. You know, well, not 20. Let's see. God, why am I so bad at math? I was on a roll too. 68. You have 14 games to go. I got to it. Leave me alone. I know my weaknesses.
Brother, I feel it. Don't worry.
I know
I'm
my
with
weaknesses.
you. I'm with you.
You got 14 to go, man. You're 42-26 with 14 to play. You're 8 games away from 50 wins. I mean, yeah. Like, can this team be a contender? A championship, if they're healthy and playing the way they are now? Yeah. And, I mean, I hesitate to make a comp to, like, when Toronto went on their run and won the championship. The most massive difference is they had Kawhi. And Kawhi had already won a championship with San Antonio at that time. He was an MVP caliber player. And the Pels don't have an NBA MVP caliber player on their roster. But they're deep and they're collected. And when you have B.I. and Zion playing at their level, and I mean, I don't need to run through the whole thing. Anyway, that's my whole premise. I want to get someone who can speak more, who can speak at a deeper level about the rest of the league than I can, to tell me if this is a team that can legitimately make a run to an NBA championship this year. And if not, where does that glass ceiling stop? Can they win a series and then bow out? Like, could they be a Western Conference Finals team? Like, what is realistic for this team this year? Big picture. Because look, the other way you could go, let me not miss this point. You're sitting there in the 5 seed right now. You're 1 game behind the Clippers in the 4. But you're 2.5 games from falling into the play-in tournament. Okay? So it can go the other way as well for this team. So where do they fall? We'll have that conversation with Andrew Lopez coming up here in about 30 minutes from right now. It's After Further Review. Been a really good show. Glad you're with us. Always love telling you about our friends over at Evermore. I got my bottle of Evermore. Well, it's empty. Well, I got one more sip. Hang on. Evermore is delicious, great tasting, smooth, all-natural water. You may think to yourself, man, water is water. It isn't. You can get that water out the tap from your local municipality, whoever it may be. They'll pump it through whatever filtration system that they have to give you a passable product. But Evermore, this is Mother Nature's masterpiece. It's a Louisiana company, great company.
with a national brand. The way this has grown has been amazing. EVAMOR. I go work out at 5:30 in the morning, and I was leaving the gym this morning, and someone was sitting on one of the benches right there, waiting to go into one of the saunas, and had a bottle of Evermore right there. And you start to see it so much because you realize, man, Evermore is natural artesian water. If you want a healthier alternative for your children, if you're an athlete, you want better hydration, this is the answer. It's Evermore. EVAMOR. Dak Prescott is their national. They have a national endorsement deal with Dak Prescott. You can buy it online, EVAMOR.com, Evermore.com, or any great local retailer. You'll find Evermore. It's great tasting water. Check it out. Evermore. All right. I'm glad to have it here on my on the set every day. I need to get the bigger bottles. They have 64-ounce bottles. I need to get those. I drink a lot of water, so I need to get. They have 20-ounce. You can get a 12-pack of 20-ounce bottles. You get the 32-ounce bottles, the 64-ounce bottles. Just trust me. The next time you're rolling through a grocery store or a gas station, grab a bottle of Evermore and just try it. Try it once and tell me you don't taste the difference. Okay, it's after further review. We'll knock out a break. Muse will have Tigers in the pros to wrap up hour number 2. Kendall Rogers in 15 minutes. Andrew Lopez in 30 minutes. We'll keep our eye on the NCAA tournament. I don't care about your bracket, and you shouldn't care about mine. The only bracket I care about is Mama Scones. So as that goes along, she's got St. Mary's winning it all, as we well know. So we'll see how St. Mary's does. She had St. Peter's last year, I think, rolling to like the Elite Eight. I'm telling you.
And they did.
I know.
And they did.
Maybe she had him in the final.
Well, she had him in the Final Four.
Probably had him in the Final Four. She had Loyola in the Final Four of the year with Sister Jean. Mom, look, it's like, there's AFR karma that we talk about here with baseball sometimes. Maybe there's Mama Scone karma. If you're a Catholic university and you have a basketball team that's in the big dance and Mama Scone's on board with you, you're going to make a run. That's kind of how it goes. All right, it's AFR.
AFR.
Brought to you by the Watermark Hotel and the Renaissance Hotel. Great event tonight at the Watermark. Told you about it. It's a wine tasting with a Stag's Leap and a wine pairing dinner. I really want you, so often around Baton Rouge, we get stuck in our little spots, right? You go to the same place for dinner. You go to the same place to have a cocktail. Or you go to the movies. You're like, man, what are you going to do? If you're looking to do something different, the Watermark and the Renaissance have done an amazing job putting together these events. Spirit tastings, cocktail tastings, charcuterie boards. This is a wine pairing dinner at the Watermark downtown inside the Gregory. So if it's the Watermark downtown, which, by the way, if you've never been to the Watermark, it is the premier hotel in Baton Rouge, the premier luxury hotel. Great place to have an event or just have a glass of wine or a cocktail at the lobby bar. It's the Watermark Hotel in downtown Baton Rouge.
after further review with Matt Moscona.
All right, wrapping up hour number 2. If you're watching with us on YouTube, do us a favor, smash that like button. Shout out to everybody watching on WBTR as well. Appreciate our TV partner over at WBTR. So if you're on linear TV or watching us on YouTube, we always greatly appreciate it. However you may be watching or listening to us, we just appreciate you for being here. Okay, Kendall Rogers in about 11 minutes. Talk some LSU-Florida in the weekend ahead in the SEC. Andrew Lopez talking some Pels in about 25 minutes. But right now, Musso has Tigers in the Pros.
Tigers in the Pros. They still bleed purple and gold. They're just really rich now.
All right, a little NFL free agency update for you here. Odell Beckham Jr., this courtesy of Josina Anderson of CBS Sports. Odell had a meeting with the Miami Dolphins earlier today, Thursday. The Dolphins are in search of a clear number 3 wideout, obviously to complement Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Beckham would be a nice choice for that. 35 catches, 565 yards, and 3 touchdowns to the Baltimore Ravens last season. We will see if ultimately that is where OBJ lands.
Or he could come home and play for the Saints.
Bring him home? No. No? Okay.
I'm going to talk about that next hour.
Okay. I mean, they explored that, didn't they, a little bit last year when it last offseason?
I think there was chatter. I don't know if they ever formally worked him out or interviewed him or anything like that. It was bandied about a bit.
I like that word.
Bandied.
Yeah, it's good.
It's good. It's a good word. But I did dive into that a little bit today in show prep because ESPN's Bill Barnwell has a piece where it's like best landing spot for the top remaining free agents, and he recommends Odell signing with the Saints. And so I did a pros and cons list.
Okay.
And I'll get to that next hour.
5:30, I guess.
5:30, yes.
Yeah,
bottom of hour number 3.
All right, bottom of hour.
Bottom of hour number 3.
Another solid night turned in by Duop Reith for the Portland Trailblazers. They lost again. You talk about the Pelicans getting 50 wins. That's 50 L's for the Blazers.
Yeah, they stink.
Duop Reith, 8 points in a 16 minutes of action. So just, really solid night. We'll give him a hat tip. Hey, Alex Bregman's turned it around in spring training. No.
Well, he should have gone.
He's not even from the state.
Doesn't matter if he was, he would have gone to Catholic High. You know that.
Yeah, I'm really not going to dispute that one. 2
Best
for 4.
baseball program in the country, Muse.
How about that? That's strong, man. I got a lot of good players there. Really good frontline arm.
I was over at Catholic today.
At Catholic.
Big fundraiser, 2-day fundraiser at Catholic. They call it, school was founded in 1894. So they call it the 1894 Minute Challenge. It's basically 2 days where they try to raise a bunch of money. So we did like a sports history panel of the school. Anyway, so I was talking to Ben DePalma, who's the AD. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, one of my first friends when I moved from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. I'm not going to take up all your time, I promise. He's the AD at Catholic now. Same graduating class 2000, shout out. Ben told me there are 14 D1 players on Catholic's baseball.
That makes sense.
14.
I mean, I obviously follow a bunch of like prep baseball pages and whatnot. And it's just every time it's like every time Catholic's on there, it's like a new player. Like, oh, it's William Schmidt. Oh, it's Jack Ruckert. Oh, it's somebody like it's
Trip Dobson.
Trip Dobson. It's everybody down there.
Shout out Trip. That's Howard Dobson, the hitting coach for LSU softball. His son Trip is a senior at Catholic, who I believe is signed with ULL. No, Houston.
Okay.
It's one of.
I thought ULL sounded correct, but I could be
think
wrong.
Tripp's going to Houston.
Okay.
Let me make sure. Anyway, what?
Yeah, Bregman was 2 for 4 today. 14 is pretty good. Bregman was 2 for 4 today. Both of them were singles, but the important reason to bring this up, he's hitting 349. He got off to one of those long, like, over streaks in spring, but the bat's coming around, and in the nick of time, opening day next week across Major League Baseball. Alex Lang, really solid day for the Langer. Got a second hold of the spring, shutout inning of work, punched out 2, and then get you an update. Austin Nola. There we go. Yeah, we can get that in there. His game's in progress. He's currently 0 for 2. That is Tigers and Pros.
Houston for Trip Dobson.
Okay.
There's someone on the team is committed to or has signed with.
Might be multiple.
I just don't remember. All right. Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. All right. It's after further review. We're putting a button here on hour number 2. Remember, if you have any roofing issues, you can always give us a shout. 364-1007, 364-1007. Terrio will be back tomorrow. It's been a minute since we've had Terrio. I think the Riot Radio Hours, it's been a month.
I was about to say, are you going on a month?
I think we've missed the last 4. We've missed each other. But Terrio will be here tomorrow. Call us for roof issues, 364-1007. Hour 3 next.
AFR.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Doug Brown. The dream is over for the beach. Arizona beats Long Beach State 85-65. Kylan Boswell with 20 points for the Wildcats. Beach coach Dan Munson was told 10 days ago he was out of a job. Then the team won the Big West tournament. Also in the first round today of the NCAAs, a familiar tourney team puts up an impressive win.
He sets it up to the foul line. Hogarth zipping left corner. Aikens' jumper is good for three. Aikens looks at the Michigan State fans behind him as he buries it to give Michigan State a 63-47 lead in the 8-9 game.
On the Westwood One NCAA radio network, Jaden Aikens with 15, Tyson Walker with 19 to lead Michigan State to a 69-51 win over Mississippi State. Illinois beats Morehead State 85-69. Terrence Shannon Jr. with 26 points for the Illini. The Padres beat the Dodgers today in Seoul 15-11. 4 hits and 4 runs batted in for Jake Cronenworth. Opening day for the rest of Major League Baseball is next Thursday.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Looking for a career you'll love with flexibility, great pay and benefits, and one of the country's top workplaces? Come join their growing team. Go to progressive.com/careers and apply online today.
From Studio 2 at the
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge Studios.
Let's ride!
Hour 3, off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. It's AFR. I'm Matt.
This is Shaq O'Neal, and I hate Matt.
Paul O'Neal.
They're chanting Paul O'Neal's name.
You sir. And Mr. Toby Template. All right, we're here. Glad you are as well. 5 o'clock, quitting time. Glad you are driving home with us. Andrew Lopez here in about 15 minutes from right now. Are the New Orleans Pelicans legitimate NBA title contenders? That's my question. They've won 8 of their last 10. They're romping dudes right now. They're healthy. They're getting a lot of buzz as the sleeper team in the Western Conference. How legitimate is it? So we'll ask that question of Andrew Lopez of ESPN, formerly covered the Pelicans for ESPN, now covering the NBA as a whole and with a heavy focus on the Spurs. But we'll get to that here in about 15 minutes from right now. It was a tough weekend to be a road team in the SEC last weekend. None of the road teams won their opening series last week. That included LSU, of course. So to what do we attribute that? How does LSU and others bounce back? Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball. Always good enough to hang out with us for a couple of minutes here. We appreciate you as always, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. How about yourself?
Well, great. I think everybody in these parts would feel a little at ease if LSU had gotten that series, or feel much better if they managed to get this one against Florida. Hey, Kendall, what do you attribute the road teams in the league struggling so much opening weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold, right? I think if you look at a lot of teams in the SEC right now, LSU included, they haven't played a lot of true road games, and I think that matters when it comes to being ready for a big road trip. I think that's one factor. But the other factor for me is when you look at the teams that you went on the road against, they're really good teams. I mean, Mississippi State, to be determined, right? Let's see if they have staying power. But, I mean, they certainly looked the part offensively. They looked much improved pitching-wise. Obviously, just from a mental standpoint, I felt like the way they kind of came back against LSU in that middle game, that's a different team mentally. And, if you look at Florida, obviously they had some midweek issues, but they're really talented and they're tough to beat on the weekend. So I think it's kind of twofold. But, yeah, it's crazy that opening weekend the road teams go 0-7. Like, how often does that happen?
I mean, I don't know. I have no context or history of that on opening weekend, but I don't know that it makes people around here feel much better, maybe a smidge. So, how sincere are LSU's problems on the mound?
I mean, I think they'll be fine, honestly. Like, I'm still a believer. I mean, Luke Coleman had one bad start. I think he's going to be totally fine. Obviously Thatcher Hurd always tends to be a little bit of a mixed bag, but I mean, he's got really good stuff. And I think even last week against Mississippi State, I don't think the stuff was the issue. I think Mississippi State at times just kind of hit him a little hard. So, I mean, let's see if it becomes a consistent issue, right? I mean, was it two weekends ago, 3 weekends ago that we saw LSU's pitching was brilliant at Minute Maid? Yeah. So I'm one of those people, like, I want to see trends, right? And, will the trend this weekend against Florida be, hey, we're going to struggle again? Or will the trend be, hey, we're going to bounce back and get back in the saddle? And I think that's to be determined. But, Luke Coleman, I think, is going to have an excellent year. I mean, Thatcher Hurd is obviously a mixed bag at times, but he's got really good stuff, so we'll see.
What was your big takeaway from Florida's opening weekend series win?
Well, I think the biggest thing that LSU is going to have to do is obviously jump on those first two starters. I think when you look at both those guys, Kate Fisher, Liam Peterson, really struggling staying in lineup. I feel like LSU's lineup has similar star power. They may not have as much, but they have similar star power. So that's going to be a big key. But I think the biggest thing for me, honestly, and it kind of goes back to LSU's pitching staff, is last weekend against A&M where Florida really got going, wasn't necessarily Jack Cagg, and it wasn't necessarily, Kate Curlin. It was Tyler Shelnut. He's an older guy. He's got a lot of experience. He got a lot of at-bats in the SEC. He absolutely killed A&M last weekend. So I think if you're LSU, Colby Shelton and Jack Caggs and Curlin are to get their heads, but you can't let guys like Shelnut and Luke Heyman and guys like that kill you. If they do, it could be a long weekend for the LSU pitching staff.
Kendall, what was, for you anyway, the most surprising result last weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was probably it is. I think when you look at Vanderbilt, just smoking Auburn. I mean, I think Vanderbilt's good, but the fact they just absolutely obliterated Auburn all weekend was really impressive to me. I think Mississippi State was certainly a surprise. I mean, I thought when LSU got up 9-1, 9-2 in the middle game.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking, okay, LSU has awoken, and Mississippi State's in deep, you know what. And that couldn't have been further from reality. I mean, Mississippi State almost came back and won the game, and then the next day they run roll the Tigers. So that obviously would go down as a surprise. And then, Ole Miss, winners of 12 straight now. Their turnaround after looking very lackluster the first couple weekends has been pretty impressive.
Both Mississippi schools. I mean, State started the season 3-4, and now they've won 12 of 13. Something. I mean, it's been incredible to watch what the Mississippi schools have done.
I've got a feeling. Yeah, great weekend for the Magnolia State, right? But I mean, I've got a bad feeling for both those teams this weekend. Ole Miss going to Tennessee, probably the most likeliest to have a bad weekend. That's just a really tough place if you're pitching just average, which is Ole Miss's pitching is average. And Mississippi State going to A&M this past weekend. I mean, A&M left just an island of runners on base and runners in scoring position in the Sunday series finale to not win that game against Florida. I don't think they made that mistake this week against Mississippi State, but time will tell. We'll find out here starting tonight.
Yeah, that series there's two series that start tonight. It's Arkansas at Auburn and Mississippi State at A&M. So let's stay there, Kendall. And Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball, is with us. State at A&M tonight. Give us the matchup to keep an eye on that one tonight.
For me, it's all about A&M's number 1 and number 3 starters against Mississippi State's lineup. Obviously, Dakota Jordan. LSU fans got a little taste of him last week, and he's been red hot. Hit another home run on Tuesday. Ryan Prager, just like Luke Coleman, had a 0.00 ERA going into the Florida series. Really struggled. A&M Sunday guy Justin Lampkin really struggled. They've got to get off to good starts with those guys on the mound. I think for Mississippi State, can lightning strike twice? I mean, they looked like a super regional caliber club last weekend. I can tell you they really, really wanted that series against LSU for a multitude of reasons. Do they have a hangover? I know it's weird to say you have a hangover 5 days later, but that was a very emotional series for Mississippi State, and I'm kind of curious to see if they can emulate that. And conditions this weekend, by the way, that are kind of rainy, cool in College Station tonight. It's going to be a little different feeling from the dude with 13,000 people there.
Okay. No, that's a great point. I mean, maybe a little more pitching defense than offensive. What about the other game tonight, as I mentioned, Kendall, the series that starts tonight, I should say, is Arkansas at Auburn. Again, two teams that had dramatically different weekends in opening weekend. Do you anticipate an Auburn bounce back at home?
I do. That is my upset pick of the weekend. I think when you look at Arkansas, I love Arkansas's pitching. And Hagen Smith, Brady Tiger, Mason Molina, probably the best rotation in the SEC. But when you look at their offense, I mean, from game one to now, I mean, it honestly hasn't been that impactful. Like, it's been solid. It hasn't been great. It's been bad at times. And I think if you go on the road against Auburn, I think it's a really tough matchup because I think Auburn can really hit. I think they can score on anyone. And again, I think when you go on the road in this league, especially with a team like Auburn, it's going to have a little bit of urgency. That's pretty scary for the Hogs.
You got 3 ranked-unranked matchups this weekend in the league, and I would assume, Ken, at least on paper, the headliner is LSU and Florida, 2 top 10 teams there, rematch of last year's College World Series Championship Series. Do you care to make a prediction or give even a key for LSU this weekend against the Gators?
I like the Tigers. I really do. I think LSU, and again, this may come back to bite me, but I think LSU can legitimately sweep this series. I just think Florida has some issues on the mound, and I get it. They're ranked high because they've continued to win series for the most part at home, other than the Miami series. But I think this is just one of those weekends where their pitching issues really bubble up a little bit. And I think LSU at home, there's a lot of buzz with Kim Mulkey's team around town. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. And I just don't like how, I don't like how Liam Peterson, a freshman, is going to kind of handle that atmosphere. I like LSU to win the first 2, and maybe Florida wins the third. But again, I would not be that shocked if the Tigers swept this weekend. I really wouldn't.
What a dramatically different conversation we'll be having on Monday in these parts if that comes to fruition.
Well, has anyone fired Jay Johnson yet? That's my question.
Maybe Todd Peterson.
Oh,
we got him.
Yes.
Oh, we got it. No, there was Paul is our objective observer. Paul, was there a delay? Did we get him?
There was a slight delay.
We caught him napping. We caught him napping.
Hey, you know what? Hey, in my book, he's back, baby.
Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball on Twitter, at Kendall Rogers. Just the best. If you want college baseball content, that's where you go. We appreciate you always, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy. Have a good weekend.
All right, man. Be well. It's After Further Review, brought to you by Michele Weighing and Measurement. You weigh or measure something, like the lump in Muso's throat right now. You want to weigh and measure that? No. If you want to weigh the bucket of sweat that Muso, no, none of that.
None of that.
You want to measure the amount of embarrassment after Muso didn't hit the Todd Peterson drop?
Todd Peterson.
Woo! I caught you leaning back in your chair, Muse.
Yeah.
I caught you leaning back in the chair. So
it was on. I had it queued up
when
too.
I did it, I was watching you. I waited for you. You were leaning back. You got lazy. That's what it was. You just got not lazy.
Complacent.
Complacent is what you did. I was going for complacent. You got a little complacent. You exhaled is what you did. You exhaled, and you know what? Boom! You got caught with a quick right. Bloodied up your lip there, Muse. You want to measure the size of the gash on Muso's lip? Michele can do that. You weigh or measure.
That's so absurd.
It is absurd. I don't care. Michele.com. Michele.com. You weigh or measure something. They sell, service, rent the products you use to weigh and measure. It's Michele.com. Michele.com. 76 years going strong. More than 30 different offices across 11 different states. Our nation's largest distributor of scales. They're just the best. It's Michele Weighing and Measurement. Michele.com. Michele.com. Okay. A smidge long there with Kendall. Let me break. It was worth it, though. It was good stuff. How about Kendall? How about Muse? Clip it. Man, clip it. Do you have Duquesne still queued up?
Not queued, but I have it.
Okay. Play it real quick. I'm Moscona saying Duquesne. Duquesne won today.
BYU plays Duquesne.
Nailed it. You need to add on to the clip when I come on and go, yep, nailed it. That would be good, too.
All right.
Andrew Lopez next.
AFR.
Brought to you by Glow Resources. GLO, glowresources.com. If you're a business owner, you need Glow Resources. If you're a business owner that has had trouble hiring or finding qualified employees, and I'm talking about not only skilled blue-collar labor, but also they have a white-collar division. So if you're looking to hire for management positions and you're struggling to find a great pool of qualified candidates, Glow Resources can help. Look them up online. GLO, glowresources.com. Look, it's tax season. Maybe you need to staff accounting personnel. If you need C-level management, project managers, if you need to staff call centers, if you need engineers, Glow Resources does all of it. GLO, glowresources.com. This isn't a last ditch. This is a first resort for quality and long-term solutions. Glow Resources.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
All right, Pels are back on the floor tonight, and they'll have a back-to-back. And I'm going to be interested to see how they respond here at Orlando, at Miami, with them starting to get an awful lot of attention now. Our buddy Andrew Lopez, ESPN.com NBA reporter, is good enough to join us for a couple of minutes. How are you, man?
Doing good, man. I, like you, am also very interested to see how this team responds, mostly because it's back-to-back, mostly because of the interest being shown, but also because they have a very tough homestand after this, with some big names, some big teams coming in. So these games are even more important as they try to hold on to playoff positioning right now.
Thunder, Bucks, Celtics, Suns all ahead.
But first things first, they got 3 more road games in this 4-game road swing. Listen, the reason I wanted to talk to you today specifically is you of course have a great knowledge of the Pelicans, having covered that team for a long time. But as a sort of national NBA reporter now, you're in a different arena a lot of nights, and you get to see every team in the league, and you get to talk to people around the league. And yes, the Pelicans right now are a trendy team, and people are saying, well, they're a sleeper in the West. What really is the conversation around the league about the Pelicans right now?
It's a lot of it is, or let's see them do it next. Like, what's the next step for them? And is Zion going to stay like this Zion for a while, and he's going to be this playmaker who is in the best shape of his career, who's making plays on defense, who looks like the guy we thought he would look like? Is Brandon going to be able to do it at that step? Is CJ going to? What is he going to do on that kind of stage? I think you're starting to see everybody wants to try to peg them right now. I think after we talked about we talked about it on the Hoop Collective. We talked about it on I think First Take had everybody was starting to talk about the Pels, and all of a sudden there's everybody's sleeper team now. And to me, it's still just. I can see them losing in the first round. I can see them winning. It's all up for grabs. And I think the one game where so they still won 7 of 8, but the one game where everybody had talked about them for a couple of days, they came out and laid an egg against Cleveland. They couldn't hit a 3, and that was it. A minus 40 plus differential in 3-pointers. That's what happened. So, but they got bounced back against LA. They've won the 2 games they were supposed to win. How would they answer, and then what does Zion look like on that stage again? I think he was embarrassed in Las Vegas and has responded to that, and I think him and how he answers is mostly what people are talking about right now.
Now, to ask a very direct question, and based on your answers, I guess how the rest of the conversation will go. Are the New Orleans Pelicans a legitimate NBA title contender?
I don't know yet. I don't think so as of this year. If you would have, I could easily see them losing in the first round. I could easily see them winning and maybe pushing somebody who isn't Denver in the second round, depending on how things shape. I think a lot of that depends on the continued growth of Z and what exactly you see in the playoff setting from Brandon. When we saw Brandon in the playoffs a couple of years ago in that Phoenix series, he was a big reason why that series even went to 6 games to start with. Against the top-seeded team in the West. What Zion does is what tells me whether or not this team can really reach that next level. And this year, I don't think so. Is it coming? It could. Maybe there's a move or two you have to make. I still think they're very reliant on the bench. The bench is the second-best bench in the NBA this year in plus-minus. There's times where you probably can't play your starting center, and there's times when you probably can't play your starting 2 guard. One of the lineups that has worked for you as of late has been when you go Larry and Trey in with Herb, Brandon, and Z. So there's still some big questions that I have about this team, but can say that they do look like they are at least trending in the right direction.
Okay, if they're not a legitimate title contender this year, where is their glass ceiling this year?
I think I would have said before the season, if you would have just got out of the play-in tournament, that's a success for this year. And I think they are trending in that direction. That to me was success. I think a 50-win season is still very obtainable. And not being in the play-in tournament. That just means being a top 16. Right now, you even still have home court on the table. Right now, I think the best case scenario for this team is you find a way to sneak into the conference finals. I really don't like their matchup against Denver or some of these other teams. A second round would be great. I still think how you play in a first round series, like if you let's take the Clippers. Okay, Clippers are in. It's Clippers Pels first round. You push the Clippers to 7. I'll view that differently than I would the Clippers sweeping you. I think it's how you compete in that first round is going to tell me a lot, and it's going to tell me more about what the next step really needs to be for this team moving forward.
Let's say Andrew Lopez is our guest. Let's say the Pels get in. They beat the Clippers in the first round. They play in that 4-5 matchup. They beat the Clippers in the first round, which, look, they won the season series against the Clippers, and they seem to play really well against them. So you don't like the matchup against Denver or some of these other teams. Look at OKC, Denver, Minnesota. Why doesn't New Orleans match up well against any or all of those?
Let's start with Denver. I just think that they have not played Nikola Jokic very well, and I think, granted, not a lot of teams have, but in his last, I think, 15 or 16 games against the Pels, he's got 14 or 15 triple-doubles. And one of the games he missed it was I think he was 1 assist or 1 rebound away. He has traditionally picked them apart. They have gone with the strategy of, we're going to make Jokic beat us. Traditionally under Willie, they'll go with the strategy of, we're going to make Willie beat us, or Jokic beat us, and try to keep all these other guys out. I don't think you have a great answer for him. Again, not a lot of teams do defensively. So that's why I don't like that matchup. Minnesota is a tricky one, because I think that might be, of the top 4 teams, honestly, the team I would most like to see in a first-round setting if I was the Pels, if Karl-Anthony Towns is not going to play. That is going to be up in the air. Obviously, he's dealing with his knee injury, although Anthony Edwards has just been playing kind of out of his mind lately, and him just in a do-or-die situation may not be what anybody wants to see. And then Oklahoma City, they're young, but they have a couple of answers that they could throw at a Zion that other teams do not. I think even if you look at Denver has Aaron Gordon. You get him in foul trouble, what happens there? Minnesota would have to play up or play, Kyle Anderson, or do some different things. Oklahoma City could throw Dort at him. They could throw Jalen Williams at him. Chet in the starting lineup, it's probably a game that more Larry has to play a little bit. Obviously, Herb is Shea. So I think all 3 are intriguing matchups. I think Denver I just don't like. OKC is kind of up in the air, kind of where they're going to go. But Minnesota is one that could be intriguing to me if Cat's out of that matchup.
Last thing for you, give me a comp for an organization that sort of bubbled and then broke through to championship caliber, whether it's Denver winning it or not, or a team that's been good but never gotten through, and where the Pels are in relation to something like that, sort of as an experiment to show, okay, they're close, but how much further do they have to go?
Yeah, so if you go back, I mean, to me, one team that you kind of thought was always going to break through and never did was kind of those grit and grind Memphis,
yeah.
And there was a stretch there where they were, oh man, it felt like every year they were going to break through, and it's 3 or 4 years, and then they don't. It's still, despite the fact that you've had a different NBA champion for the last 5 seasons, it's still hard to win an NBA championship. This is only the second time, I think, in NBA history where you have had 5 different champions in 5 different years, and sometimes your window is very, very short. 2019, the Toronto Raptors didn't really get back to competing. Obviously, Kawhi had a lot to do with that, but they spent 2 years kind of meddling around, and then, okay, maybe a reset's coming. The Lakers from 3 years ago, obviously the Lakers are the Lakers, and they are what they are. We'll leave them alone. Bucks from a couple of years ago still competing. I mean, the Warriors are 2 years removed. They may not make the playoffs this year. So they're still just it's very hard to do, but you've had teams who they've peaked in the conference championship and have never really gotten through. It's still very hard. So I think if for fans, if you're looking at this season and thinking, oh man, they're bad, or they're this, or they didn't win a title, it's a failure, or they lose in the first round, it's like there's still a lot to have to be played here. I think there's still a lot to grow on, especially when you're looking at your superstars, and you look at Zion, and it's just the best year he's had. He's 23 years old. he looks like he's getting better every game. He's 4 games away from playing the most games he's played in an entire season. He looks like he's going to play 65 games and qualify for postseason awards. He could be an All-NBA kind of guy this year. Things are still looking up. No matter what happens, I think, in the playoffs, things are still looking up. But there will be some moves that have to be made. There are definitely some steps that have to be taken. You're going to have to look at the center spot. You're going to have to look at where's the best spot for CJ moving forward, if it's going to be closing in that group. But it's there. But these are the steps I think you want your franchise to be taking if you're a fan of the team.
You mean having your best players for the entire season helps you be good?
It kind of does. It kind of does. It's a foreign concept, I think, to New Orleans fans for a little while, but it actually kind of works.
Oh, man. Andrew Lopez, at @Andrew_Lopez on Twitter. Give him a follow. Always appreciate a couple of minutes, man. Hope to catch up with you soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right, be well. I think it's a very, very realistic approach on where this organization, where this team is and where this organization is. It's not to say you can't get hot and make a run. I mean, we saw the Miami Heat last year make it all the way to the NBA Finals in a lesser Eastern Conference, but you get in and we'll see. They've been fun to watch. Pels back on the floor tonight against Orlando. Back-to-back, Orlando and Miami. Okay, we're brought to you by Pure Restoration, pure-restoration.com, pure-restoration.com. Kill mold, remove odor. Scone, what's the mold thing you always talk about? Pure Restoration. If you can't remember, just shoot me a message, a note, email me. I'm easy to find. DM me, text me. Scone, what's the mold thing that you always talk about? Pure Restoration. If you have mold, think you might, at your home or an office building, any type of commercial building. I know they sprayed in churches and schools and all over the place. Look, we live in South Louisiana. It's wet and it's humid. There's mold. If you got mold, think you might, let Pure Restoration help. More efficient and more cost-effective. They can get in and out. I mean, half a day they can have you sprayed and done with mold. Pure-restoration.com, pure-restoration.com. All right, one of the things, been a great show. We had a ton to do today. Thanks to Kendall Rogers and Andrew Lopez. Mike Triplett was here last hour. One of the things we did talk about an hour ago was the possibility of the Saints targeting Odell Beckham in free agency. I did a pros and cons list, and we'll share that with you next when we get to Otter Locks in about 15 minutes. It's AFR.
AFR. after further review with Matt Moscona.
Okay, we'll get to Otter locks here in about 10 minutes. Rough night for the Otter last night. Don't know how he did today, but Jimmy and Charlie are over in Biloxi at the Bow for their shows today, tomorrow, and Friday. I'm sorry, tomorrow is Friday. Were they there yesterday, or was he on his way?
No, they were there yesterday as well. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday.
3 days at the Bow, and then the Sunday show as well, which I guess we'll talk about the Sunday games in the next week.
I think so, yes.
Anyway, if you want all your NCAA tournament gambling talk, Otter will have it. He'll be here in about 10 minutes. Rough night last night. Hope he had a bounce back today. We'll see. Okay. I don't have a ton of time here, but I want to make sure I get this in. Bill Barnwell at ESPN.com has a piece up where he looks at the top 10 free agents in the NFL, talks about why they're available, why they should be signed, and by his estimation, the best fit for each free agent. And among them is Odell Beckham. He also mentions Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jamal Adams. It says Clyde to Buffalo. I thought that was interesting. But Odell, he writes, the best fit for Odell Beckham, the New Orleans Saints. I'll read you the quick write-up as to why he says New Orleans. Bill Barnwell writes, call me a romantic, but getting Beckham back home would be a natural way for the former LSU star to wind down his NFL career. The Saints have a need for a second wideout after releasing Michael Thomas. Rashid Shaheed will take more snaps as the team's designated deep threat, and Cedric Wilson is in town after disappointing over the last 2 years in Miami. But Beckham would fit in as a part of the rotating cast behind third-year star Chris Olave, especially if the price tag is about half what it was for the Ravens a year ago. So let's start there with the price tag. Odell did not play in the NFL in 2022. Remember, he tore his ACL at the end in the Super Bowl with the Rams, missed the entire 2022 season, and then came back with Baltimore in 2023. He signed a one-year, $15 million deal with Baltimore this past year. And he had a good bounce-back season. He was not the guy that they were counting on to be the front of the rotation guy, but Odell had 35 catches for 565, 3 scores, averaged 16 yards a catch. That is a more than respectable number 2 or 3, depending on the offense. Now, $15 million is a steep price to pay for 35 catches, and I don't think the Saints would offer him a $15 million deal, but as Bill says, what about half that price? Now, we're interested. So I got a piece of paper, and I did pros and cons. So I'll run through, because the easiest thing to do would be what Bill said there. To be a romantic and say, Odell's from New Orleans, he played at LSU, bring him home. Same thing with Jarvis and with Tyron and with Foster Moreau. And remember, last year they signed Trey Turner as well, but he got injured in the preseason and never got to play. But we've seen this. We've seen the Saints sign these LSU guys, these Louisiana guys, and bring them home. And there's this emotional part of that makes us all receptive to it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best or right thing to do. So I try to look at it somewhat objectively. So here's the pros. Number one, obviously, he's from New Orleans. It would be a fan favorite sentimentality. I think that has to be on or at the top of the list. Jarvis, Tyron, Foster, all those guys. Yeah, Trey Turner, yes, that's a pro. This would be adding a veteran wide receiver to a young room. Chris Olave, still just a third-year player. Rashid Shaheed is a young pro as well. You added Cedric Wilson, who's in his late 20s. He's been around the league a little bit, but that's a veteran guy. But this would be certainly a more accomplished player, and adding someone like Odell with Michael Thomas exiting. The affordability would have to be a pro. I'm assuming that Bill Barnwell would be right here in what the market value would hold for Odell. If it's roughly half the price of what Baltimore paid a year ago, 1 year, $7 million around there. It's about what you paid for Willie Gay on a one-year deal. Now, Willie Gay's in his mid-20s. Odell's 31. So it's a little different there, but it's still just a one-year deal. There would be an affordability. I also think if you brought Odell in, there would be minimum expectations. You're not bringing Odell Beckham in to be your number one receiver. You're bringing him in to be your 2 or 3, also keeping in mind this is an offense where you target the running backs. And I get it. It's a different offense now, but think of Clint Kubiak in San Francisco with Christian McCaffrey and the amount of times they threw him the football. They also make use of the tight end. Now, you had George Kittle in San Francisco, so you got to fix that in New Orleans or find that in New Orleans. But you wouldn't be saying, Odell, I need 100 catches. So there's a difference there in what the expectation is, and certainly a difference at 31 years old with a history of injuries that have plagued his career of what Odell's ceiling could be. And I also look and I say, I'm not sure there's a better option in free agency right now. The one guy, and he's very different player stylistically, but the one guy I could mention would be Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow was with Derek Carr, with the Raiders in Las Vegas, and that's something we've seen, that pipeline from Oakland, from Foster Moreau and Brian Edwards and Johnathan Abram coming along with Derek Carr a year ago. So that's something that the Saints have done. They've gone and they've signed Carr's teammates with the Raiders, and Hunter Renfrow could be that option. But aside from that, I'm not sure there's a really great veteran receiver option in free agency that would make a lot of sense. So there's a long list of pros. The cons, though, are would give me pause, of course. Number one, how much does Odell have left in the tank? He's 31 years old. He'll be 32 before the end of next season. And he missed the entire 2022 season. Of course, there was the ankle injury. There was the ankle sprain, which begot the ankle fracture. Then he gets traded to the Browns, makes his way to the Rams. He has the torn ACL. He misses all of 2022. A guy who had a dominant 3-year run to start his career has just seen his production drop off dramatically because of injury. So how much does Odell at 31, almost 32, have left in the tank? It is fair to ask about how he would fit in the locker room. In the same way that Michael Thomas became a problem on this team, would Odell be the same thing? And if you're working on rebuilding culture, is bringing in a guy who has not had the best reputation of being a team-first guy, whether that's fair or unfair. I said reputation. Again, whether that's fair or unfair, I said reputation. I mean, we had Odell Sr. going on social media teeing off on Baker Mayfield. That's not exactly the best way to build culture around an organization. And the other part of that, and maybe these are hand in hand, is Derek Carr isn't exactly the strongest leader. I mean, he called out guys during games, from his fighting with Eric McCoy, Michael Thomas calling him out on social media, going after Chris Olave, not taking blame for the interception against the Falcons. Like, Derek Carr isn't exactly the guy that stands up and you think, man, that's the guy I'm just going to line up behind. He doesn't give that vibe. Well, we saw Odell not jive with Baker Mayfield. On the flip side of it, whenever he was in L.A. with Matthew Stafford, that was a good match. This year in Baltimore, where Lamar Jackson is the alpha, the dude, the MVP, Odell was a good citizen. Would he fit with Derek Carr? I don't know that, and that gives me pause because I don't think Derek Carr is the strongest leader. So when I look at potential role, potential cost, amount of productivity, there's a lot of things that make sense, but what might make more sense is to say, in a draft where this is such a deep draft, y'all. Like, I was looking at PFF today and their ranking of the receivers in this draft. They ranked the top 10. Keon Coleman wasn't even in the top 10. What if Keon Coleman's sitting on the board in round 3? Let me ask you, would you rather rookie third-round pick Keon Coleman on a rookie deal, or a guy like Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, who played at Georgia and Bama, on a rookie deal, or 31-year-old Odell Beckham on a 1-year contract? Tugging on my heartstrings, the answer is Odell. Practically, in a deep receiver draft like this, you can package some of those fifth-round picks and steal a talented receiver in round 3 this year. And that would be my preference, is not to sign a veteran like Odell or Hunter Renfrow. Go steal a rookie in this draft. And maybe what it comes to is after the draft, if that doesn't manifest, maybe Odell or Renfrow or one of these veteran guys are still out there. Remember, it was very late in the process before Odell signed with Baltimore last year. I just don't think you need to be in any rush. This is one where I can say, be patient, wait till after the draft, and let the chips fall where they may. All right, we'll wrap up the show with Otter Locks next.
AFR.
Brought to you by Clegg's Nursery. 4 locations in the greater Baton Rouge area. Siega near Airline, LA-16 in Denham. Mid-City on Donmore and the Garden Center on Greenwell Springs. Y'all, we are pushing toward the weekend. And if this weekend you're planning on getting in the garden, make sure you get by Clegg's. Just plant something. Full greenhouses and all the products you need. Maybe you're starting to go treat your lawn again. The grass is growing. It's time to start mowing again. And you're noticing weeds in your lawn. It is time to weed and feed, and Clegg's Nursery can help. They've got all the products that you need, and if you need garden tools, they've got that as well. Remember, they're partnered with True Value Hardware Store. It's Clegg's Nursery. Any of the 4 locations, Siega near Airline, LA-16 in Denham, Mid-City on Donmore. Turn off of Florida onto Donmore. It's right there on the right. And the Garden Center on Greenwell Springs as you're leaving Central, heading toward downtown Baton Rouge. As soon as you pass the welcome or thank you for visiting Central sign, it's immediately on the right. It's Clegg's Nursery. Buy local, shop local. Tell them Matt sent you in to Clegg's Nursery.
after further review with Matt Moscona.
Down the stretch we come, final segment here on this Thursday edition of AFR. One thing left to do, find out what we're betting on tonight. Time for Otter Locks. What?
We're frozen over here.
Okay, Otter, how are you?
Good, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, man. Just a problem with the imaging computer over there. Good day so far. How's it going for you?
Good. First half unders are like 5 and 6. Lost some tough ones. The half court shot before the half, South Carolina put it over for the first half. Randy McKay is probably our hottest contributor right now. He had Akron first half. They covered East. Or had State first half. Covered East. He's coming with South Dakota State also, first half. So it's funny because those teams didn't cover for the whole game, but the first half they did pick it. Going to take Oakland plus 13. It's experience just for a lot, tons of points here with Oakland, Kentucky, but that's 13 way too many. Of course, Willie Wade, Willie Kid, give us that Michigan State in 7 right there. Randy McKay also, his group in Tennessee, minus the points against St. Peter's. Okay. Charlie Hannegriff, best bet today. Is Texas Tech looking for the fatigue factor for NC State after 5 games, 5 days. And then Stanford bet it earlier. And, Kansas is not what they usually are. Kansas has been a fade team for me all season long. They're just not up to their usual standards. And then you lose your leading scorer. That's up for me. And then kind of a popular pick. Just about all of our contributors, including Matt Humans today, has come with the Drake Bulldogs against Washington State. So maybe because that CBS broadcast of the Missouri Valley Conference final was high level. I mean, they knocked Indiana State out the whole thing, and a lot of people had a lot of respect for Indiana State. So Drake's comfortable. Keep in mind, they had a lead on Miami by 8 very late and found a way to lose. And of course, Miami wound up in the Final Four.
Out of the adage of favorites early, dogs late kind of bit me. I played Drake
1 minute remaining.
Earlier in the week, I think on Monday at -2. It's -1 right now. It's actually a better number.
Yeah, that first 2 days of the tournament, it's different.
Okay.
Throw all those things out because there's not anything in sports, gambling, where the first 2 days the public bets on dogs, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, it's a different deal. People, it's been a lot of fun too, man. They go, these first to 15 props, oh man, they get people excited.
Yeah.
You know who they got when they're going back and forth. So, hit for Oregon, it's a free throw for them to win the first 15 South Carolina.
All right, Otter, we'll look for you tomorrow at the Bow. Have a great night and good luck.
Good luck, Matt. Thanks.
All right, be well. Otter and Hanny are live at the Beau Rivage tomorrow again, and then Sunday as well for their, basketball Sunday show. That's going to do it for us here on a Thursday edition of AFR Muse. Paulie, I appreciate it. Have a great night. See you tomorrow at 3.
AFR.